Please rise for the pledge, which will be led by Gary Katz. Thank you. The legal voters of the town of Newfane, Vermont are hereby notified and warned that pursuant to Title 17, Vermont State Statutes, Section 2655, they are to meet at the Williamsville Hall in Newfane, Vermont on Tuesday, March 5th, 2013 at 9 a.m. to act upon the articles below. Will anyone who is present and not a registered voter in the town of Newfane please stand and identify yourself? Patricia Grace is our new administrative assistant. Is there anyone else who is not a registered voter in the town of Newfane? Please. Thank you. Sergeant Martin from the Sheriff's Department. Is there anyone else? No one from Professor Bryan's class this year. Are there any new voters in the town of Newfane here for the first time? Please stand and introduce yourself.
My name is Lynn Forrest. We'll run over the road in South Newfane at the big red house with the heart-shaped pump.
That's Lynn Forrest. And where are you moving here from?
Outside of San Francisco.
Okay, our gain, California's loss. Anyone else?
I'm Linda Campany. I moved here in the spring from Columbus, Mississippi.
Thank you, Linda Campany. And you probably have something to do with the gentleman sitting next to you.
My son Chris.
There you go.
Original commission.
Okay. Welcome to Newfane. Anyone else? Yes.
Don Green, Newfane Hill Road, and moved from Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Welcome, Don, right?
Yes.
Great. Anyone else? All right. I'd like everybody to take 30 seconds and say hello and introduce yourself to the person sitting around you if you don't know them. All right. Order, please. I want to thank the town crew for setting up. I want to thank Baman Mandavi, who has again graciously provided us with this PA system. The Newbrook 6th grade has coffee and cake for sale at the back of the room, and Dan DeWalt has organized a potluck. Now, if you didn't know about the potluck, here are the details. It's immediately following the meeting. It'll be served downstairs. If you brought a dish, please bring it downstairs. If it needs to be heated, you're supposed to place it on the counter. If it doesn't need to be heated, it can just go on a table. And everyone is welcome, even if you didn't bring a dish. And thinking ahead to the first Tuesday of 2014, plan on a potluck following the meeting. So, this meeting is being recorded by Brattleboro Community Television for broadcast on Comcast and Southern Vermont Cable. Residents can watch the meeting on Channel 10 and streaming at brattleboro.tv.org. In addition, the meeting will be available to watch on demand at brattleboro.tv.org, so you can see this all again. Johanna Gardner has asked that I announce the return of the talent show. It will take place right here on March 23rd at 7 p.m. Admission is by donation. It benefits the Leland and Gray High School players. And you can learn more or sign up with Johanna. Johanna? Not here yet. Later. She'll be here. You know, actors' hours. Finally, Governor Shumlin has chosen to visit our town meeting this year and is expected at about 10 this morning. I'm sure he would like to speak with us, but he can't unless we give him permission. And we'll see if we grant that if and when he arrives. I'd like you now to please turn to your town report, and there were some extra ones. If you don't have one, please share. All right. On the inside of the front cover, you will see that this year's town report is dedicated to Vera Harrington, who is our longest lived resident in Newfane. There are more town reports. As you can see, if you turn to page 81, you will see that not all of us live as long as Vera, and we remember the 10 townspeople we lost this year with a moment of silence. I'm sorry, that's page 83. But on page 81, you'll see that we gained 9. These are 9 future voters. And as we deliberate today, let us please be mindful that we benefit from those who attended town meeting before us, and that we have the obligation to do our best for those who will follow. Let us do so passionately and politely. I thank the town for sending me to moderator school again this year. But by now, what I've learned most is that many of you know Robert's rules better than I do, so I'm not going to review them this morning. I will, however, offer information and advice about procedure as we go along. If you do have a question about how to do something, if you don't understand what is happening, or you want to do something and you don't know how, please ask. And if you disagree with the moderator, you can appeal. And if that happens, I will walk you through it and tell you how. Okay? My job is simply to guide you through your town meeting, following Robert's Rules of Order. Please wait to be recognized by the moderator. Stand up, state your name so our clerk can get your name in the minutes. Address your comments to the moderator and speak loud so that you can be heard. We do have another mic that can travel. Article 1 is by Australian ballot, and the polls are open until 7 p.m. tonight. Article 2. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane accept the minutes of the 2012 town meeting? What is the pleasure of the assembly?
So moved.
Please raise your hand to be identified, stand up, and say what you have to say. Who was that? And you are?
Jody French, Lost Mile Road.
And you move Article 2. Is there a second? Shall the voters of the town of Newfane accept the minutes of the 2012 town meeting? Is there any discussion? Yes.
Greg Rexford, Madam Moderator, I'm a little confused here on the minutes of last year. Who reads these and approves these?
Is there someone who can answer this question? The question is, who reads and approves the minutes? I believe that's what we're doing right now.
Again, I have to fall back on when I was selectman. I believe these minutes, normally speaking, the town clerk that took care of them, they're given to another member of the Board of Civil Authority or someone else to sign off on them before they are put into the town report. Is that still the case?
We'll find out.
Gloria Costello
The minutes were given to Deb as the moderator, and that was the procedure that I'd used for the previous 2 and 3 years with Chris Petrak. And so she approved these. What I did not do was to give the signed copy for the electronic copy to go into the town report.
You can tell I have so little memory of this. Great reading.
And I guess that's where I come from on this. They're on page 74, Article 3. I am totally baffled as to why that was put in such short version. And to be honest with you, it doesn't make any sense. There were amendments that day. There's no record of that in here. Yet at the end, it says the amendment to the article was approved. It doesn't even show that the amendment was made.
Would you like to make a motion to speak in favor of not approving this article?
I don't believe we're talking about the article.
We are talking about Article 2. Yeah. So are you arguing against accepting the minutes?
Well, unless there's someone that can give me a justification as to why it was not done.
All right.
Because that's what I'm asking for, is why in Article 4, there were numerous amendments, and they were all down there. The article was read 3 or 4 times. And yet in Article 3, it was brushed right over. And I would also just point out on Article 10, I'm sorry, Article 11.
This is on page 77. Article 11, 77.
The voters town of Newfane authorized the select board to borrow up to $125,000 for capital needs. I showed in my town report last year that was $198,000.
Would you like to amend the minutes so that, what can I help you do?
Well, I guess the man moderator asked my question. I'm totally baffled as to why the minutes, if they were read over, checked. I guess, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Do I make a motion not to approve minutes?
You can vote against it when it comes, or you can make an amendment to correct the minutes. And if you'd like to think about it, you get to speak twice on each article. Then I'll come back to you. Maybe someone else can help us out.
Michael Granger, I would like to ask a question germane to this town report of the board.
Does it have to do with Article 2?
It's very germane to, and I'll call for a point of order. I want to know who, I'm just asking, this is a tough job you guys do. I did it. It's not easy. This is not a critique, but it's huge. Who prepared this report? This is a simple question.
I did, Patricia Grace.
Okay. Let me, as a point of order, let me read what is on the Secretary of State's website. And again, I apologize for doing this at the last minute. I found this morning. It says, the town report must be distributed at least 10 days prior to town meeting, which we did. It is the responsibility of the town board of auditors to prepare an annual town report. As an aside here, for 3 years running, I haven't seen an auditor listed for the town meeting. The law requires that this report be mailed and distributed to the voters of the town at least 10 days prior to the meeting, 24 PSA 1682. If the town has voted to eliminate the office of auditor, which I don't recall doing, we did? Okay. Then, the findings of the public accountant must be mailed or otherwise distributed by the select board at least 10 days prior to town meeting. For at least 3 years that I looked up, Sullivan and Powers, our auditors, say the same mealy-mouthed thing every stinking year. We are auditing the financial statements of the town of Newfane supposed to have provided the findings. There are no findings. There never are no findings. I've gone into the town clerk's office a number of times. I cannot get an auditor's report.
Here.
Christine Druk, to address that question, you were right. Last year, I was not on the board. I've served this first year. The audit is in the town clerk's office for last year. It arrived late, so that audit has actually been done. This year's audit is in process, and the biggest single problem with the completion of the audit is $4.5 to $5 million worth of flood money had to go through the general ledger. And in order to complete even a general audit, we have to do what's called a single audit process. These auditors have to come in and they have to look at randomly, whatever they choose, 51 areas of town that meet this $5 million worth of money. And that is a huge undertaking. So while it's in process, and that's why they wrote this in here, they are in the middle of completing this audit, but it will take some time.
Turn the mic off, please.
Is there further discussion about either the audit? Does that answer your question?
I'm going to use my second time.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with all due respect, I asked for 2012 a number of times throughout the year and couldn't get it. Not 2012, I'm talking 2011. And are you telling me that 2011 is available or 2012? 2011. Okay. Through the March 30th, 2011 is available.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to opine for 1 second, and then I'll sit down and shut up. In light of irregularities with the previous town clerk as it related to cash receipts and dog licenses, in light of every month you reading about a town or a nonprofit, Algiers comes to mind, district where somebody absconded with money and embezzlement. In light of our administrative assistant resigning, in light of the planning commission admitting that they couldn't find a digital form of the town minutes, the town plan. In light of a lot of things that are going on, in light of the inadvertent misallocation of a dedicated fund, I would think that there are a huge number of warning shots across the bow, so to speak, where we should be putting a lot more emphasis on an auditor's report. I've looked, Brookline, Townsend, Dummerston, all have the acceptance of an auditor's report as part of their town meeting. I didn't even look any further. I don't see why we need to be an exception in this day and age when things are pretty complicated, with all due respect to all the people who do a hard job in this town.
You want to speak to
this.
Mike, the audit for 2011 is right on the counter, and it's been there. We received those back June, I think it was. So they've been sitting on the counter, and we certainly did not have the audit for 2012.
Did everyone hear Carlene? Carlene Pelsu said Greg points out there's a 75,000 difference according to his memory of what was passed and what's in the memory. We want to know what happened. Turn it on.
My memory is that the allocation, and Dennis Wiswell is here, who was the chair at that time, for capital expenditures was $125,000 as stated in the minutes.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak to this?
The best way that we can find that out is that we have a copy of last year's town meeting from BCTV, and I will be certainly willing to go through and check that.
Yes.
Doris Knetchel. Greg is right that the Article 11 should have been $198,000, because that's what it says in the capital report. The 125 was what was to be for the taxes to be raised. The amount to be borrowed, according to, if you look, I don't know, pictures in the capital.
Sorry, those are different figures.
No, it's not.
Please finish.
I would like to. Let me tell you the page that the capital where it shows for last year. If you look on page 21, and you look under 2012, 2013, under the line item for borrowing, it is $198,000.
Let's do that once more. That's page 21. And what column?
2012, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And under borrowing, it says $198,000. And up above, if you look for additions to the reserve, that's the amount to be raised in taxes. That's $125.
Just a minute.
And the Article 11 reads, authorize the select board to borrow up to $125, and it's really supposed to be $198.
So you're saying there's an error on Article 11 in the minutes?
Right, it says Craig's statement.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
I would just like to suggest, so that we can move forward, if there are some errors and omissions in the minutes, why don't we just vote down the minutes, and then the next time they can be put up and approved? It just seems to me to be a lot of time spent on this, and there's other more important things that we have to do and address at the meeting. I would like to call the question and have the article voted.
All right. Since you've called the question, I'll give you a chance to withdraw that. If you call the question, we need a second and a 2/3 majority. If you don't call the question, I can ask if you're ready to vote.
In that case, I withdraw calling the question. I'm just thinking that I think we should move forward and vote. If there are things that were inadvertently left out, we just don't approve the minutes and we can approve them next time. I don't see that there's any dire consequences of doing that.
Is there any, if there is no objection, we will vote on Article 2.
I object.
There are objections. All right.
Tom Adele, can we just amend the minutes?
Yes, we can. Is that what you wanted to say?
I would like to amend the minutes in that case to have the figure read $198,000 to be borrowed. I think there was a confusion simply between borrow and what our capital needs, what we were adding to the capital budget. So I would like to amend
the minutes.
To read $198,000 to be borrowed.
You want to amend the minutes, Article 11, and remind me what page we're on here? 77? Article 11 to change $125,000 to $198,000. Yes.
Lolly, what about the other thing Greg brought up in the minutes that wasn't in there? Things that aren't there, so we need to address the other one after we do it.
Procedurally, we have to do one amendment at a time.
Has it been seconded?
Mike Granger, Is there discussion on the amendment? Are you going to, pardon? Oh, it's already been seconded. Thank you. Is there discussion about the amendment? Changing Article 11 to read $198,000 instead of $125,000 on page 77 of last year's minutes. Since there's no further discussion, I think you're ready to vote on the amendment. An aye vote means you accept the change. A no vote means you don't. All those in favor of changing Article 11 of last year's minutes to read, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to borrow up to $198,000 for capital needs, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And all those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The motion passes. That's just amending last year's minutes. Is there another amendment to the minutes that anyone would like to suggest? Yes, sir.
Walter French, Lost Mile. I think we could be here a long time, but this is what we're going to do, and I agree with Bruce that we should probably table this. On page 78, under other business, we really didn't discuss People's United Bank. It was Citizens United, the legal matter. So if we go through these, we're going to find a lot of items, and we're going to be working on Article 2 when the governor gets here.
What would you like to do about that?
I would join Mr. Hasselbach in moving that these be tabled until next year and allow a full review, and we'll get this year's minutes next year.
I would suggest that perhaps instead of tabling, we could table it or we could call the question, and you can then decide whether to pass it or defeat it.
I will not profess to be familiar with Robert's rules. So
Okay.
with
So,
terminology, we can call the question.
is there a second to call the question?
On the original motion, but as amended, that's what you call it.
We're calling the question on the amended, yes, the minutes have been amended once. We are calling the question. To call the question, we have a motion. I need a second.
Second, Kim Friedman.
And thank you. And then we need a 2/3 majority. An aye vote means you accept the minutes as amended. A no vote means that you don't accept the minutes as amended. Point of order, yes. Thank you. Yes, we're simply calling it, we're simply deciding an aye vote means you want to stop debate on this. And a no vote means you want to keep talking about Article 2. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. So now we vote on the amendment, on Article 2. In this case, an aye vote means that you accept the minutes as amended, and a no vote means you do not accept the minutes as amended. Everybody understand? Ready to vote? Article 2. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane accept the minutes of the 2012 town meeting as amended? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. No. The noes appear to have it. The noes have it, and the motion fails. Article 3. Yes. Does anybody know? Yes.
I'd like to offer a suggestion.
Can you?
Kim Friedman, South Newfane, that the minutes be reviewed and amended and posted on the town's website within 30 days of today.
I don't know that you can. You've got me procedurally there. Excuse me? What was that?
My
We did. We just we defeated them.
No, I'm saying, with Kim's suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be voted on next year or some other time. The approval.
Point of order.
You can't just,
Point of order. It must be, but the only place that can approve or reject the minutes is the town meeting, so it will have to be approved at the following meeting.
or a special meeting.
Or at a special meeting for that sole purpose.
Like you just point out,
I think you've already spoken twice to the Article 2, but we're on. Go ahead. Go ahead.
maybe it's a point of order then.
Right?
Please, folks, don't take minutes lightly. When I was on the board, we went to court for over 2 years because of minutes. Okay, so don't just brush this off that they aren't important. They may seem frivolous, but they're not. We lost thousands, and I'm talking thousands of dollars with zoo insurance and all that. Taxpayers didn't get directly hurt. Please, don't take these lightly.
Article 3. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses? The town clerk, $34,608 annual salary. The town treasurer, $34,608 annual salary. Listers, $13.91 per hour. Other elected or appointed officers, $8.46 per hour. And mileage reimbursement of 55 cents per mile. Is there a motion?
So moved. Lynn Forrest, I move that we accept Article 3 as stated in the piece.
Is there a second?
I
Lynn Forrest moved that the article be moved as stated in the warning, and Myra Fassler seconded it. Is there any discussion? Yes. Please identify yourself.
Gary Katz from Newfane. Have a comment and a question for the board. If I've calculated it correctly, based on the town clerk and the town treasurer salary increases, that's an increase of 3% this year, which makes the third year in a row that the increases for elected officials in town have far exceeded, for example, the increases that people on Social Security are getting. In the context of a continually troubled economy where people are struggling to find jobs, let alone get pay raises, my question to the board is, what is the justification for the third year in a row to be offering pay increases to elected officials that almost double the increases that the people who are paying their salaries are getting?
Is there a member of the board who would like to address that?
Yeah, we discussed, as we have in the prior year, though not all prior years, the issue of what would be a reasonable cost of living increase for all our town employees. The board considered that the elected officers are in fact employees and in fact do a 40-hour-a-week job and were deserving, as was the road crew, was also given a 3% across-the-board increase. While it is true, while it is factual, that Social Security cost of living increases were less, that is because, in my personal opinion, of the manipulation of the COLA, cost of living index, made intentionally to reduce Social Security payments. Rather than following that nefarious precedent, the board felt it more appropriate to give an across-the-board increase to 3%, including town officials as well as town employees such as the road crew. It was not extended, however, to the select board members. That rate was, and the mileage rate remained the same as last year.
So you just state the fact that I abstained from that vote.
And Todd and Gloria both abstained from that vote.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this before I recognize Mr. Katz a second time?
Greg Record, I've got what most of you know what I'm going to do here. I would like to,
There has been an amendment as stated. Is there a second? You're seconding it? Okay. Is there any discussion about the amendment?
Well, I'd just like to speak against the amendment. I think the select board chairman's reasoning was fair and reasonable.
And you are?
Tom Bedell, Williamson.
Thank you. Did everyone hear?
Kim Colley and Newfane. I'd just like to say that these salaries to begin with are not incredibly high. So a 3% raise on not much is not much. So I think they deserve the raises that they're getting, and I think this was a responsible decision by our select board.
Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? In back. Is there another opinion to be? Go ahead.
Gary Katz. I appreciate the rationale and the response from the select board to the question that I raised before. The fact remains that the people who are putting the bill for any increases that we give to anybody are still working in an economy struggling to find jobs, and they did not get the increases, regardless of the reason they didn't get the increases or the manipulations that may or may not occur. They did not get it, which means that we're asking the taxpayers to bite more deeply into their pocketbooks than we have even over the past few years, where we've given people pay raises and nobody else in town who's paying the bills is getting those pay raises.
Is there any other discussion? Did you want to speak, Marshall? Anyone else? Sir.
David Roberts, South Newfane. I would concur that 3% is a modest increase on a very modest salary. Unfortunately, we cannot raise the income for the people who are employable. It's out of our hands. So, unfortunately, we do have to pay for these very reasonable and very modest increases for the people who work so hard for us. But it is a reasonable increase.
Linda Dallas, Williamsville. May I ask a question?
Sure.
What does that mean to the taxpayers of Newfane? Is it about a penny?
I would defer to Doris Knetchell, who's usually our number cruncher in these instances.
If it went from, what is it, 33.6 to 34, which is as much as 25. 34.6. What were you talking about?
We're talking about going from 33.6 to 34.6.
As you will notice in one place in your town report, a penny raises $28,000, and it certainly doesn't come up to a penny for that increase.
So that's what we're talking about.
Much less. Much less.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? It's your second time.
Thank you. Greg Record. Again, I wish the focus did not turn on the money. I have been there. I have done this. I'm telling you, they deserve a heck of a lot more. It's not about the money. You do this every time, and that's not where I'm coming from. And first off, I disagree totally with the chairman. An elected official is totally different than a town employee. There's a whole different set. Town employees can be reviewed. They have there's different levels that they go through. You can, the elected official, you get what you got. And I find this, to be honest with you, a little bit insulting because I feel in the past, we had Mrs. Coleman, Mr. Currington, God bless Sandy, Janice. They did no worse, and I would argue a better job than the officials we have now. They got a fraction of this. So it's not about the money. What's bothering me about this, as Gary pointed out in the street, we just keep throwing money at it. And I'm a little bit concerned, unfortunately, that the elected officials seem to feel they don't have a problem with it. When I was on the board for 7 years, every time we came to budget, we never even discussed the selectmen's pay. That wasn't part of it. And it bothers me nowadays that is what's happening. People seem to be more concerned about what's in it for me, and not the fact when you're elected, you're here to serve your constituents, to serve your community, your friends. So I'm not here, I'm not going to argue with you that it's about the penny or less than a penny, that you're absolutely correct. And all said and done, 33.6 is not an adequate pay for what they're doing, but it's not about the pay. You don't run for these offices for the pay. But if we choose to do this, if that's what we want to do, we have other avenues we can check. And I'll look into that. I mean, I'm just saying, please don't misconstrue my point. I'm not trying to personally attack anything. It's just the idea that we just keep throwing money.
In back.
Nancy Rubio, Wennesville, can I call a question?
Yes, you may. Well, if people want to call the question, is there a second?
Second.
Myra Fassler seconds it. The question has been called on the amendment. Now, first we're calling the question. All those who call the question, which will end debate on the amendment, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those who are opposed by saying nay. The ayes have it. And the question is called. We're now going to vote on the amendment, and I'm going to read the amendment. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses? Town clerk, $33,600. Town treasurer, $33,600 annual salary. Listers, $13.50 per hour. Other elected officials and appointed officers, $8.46 per hour, and mileage reimbursement of 55 cents per mile. That's the amendment. An aye vote means, excuse me, John. John, it's really distracting. Thank you. An aye vote means that you accept the amendment, and a no vote means you defeat the amendment. And we're back to square one. Are there questions?
Do you mean the amendment or the article?
We're voting on the amendment to level fund it which the amendment reads that the town clerk will get $33,600 annual salary, the town treasurer will get $33,600 annual salary, the listers will get $13.50 per hour, other elected and appointed officials will get $8.46 per hour, and mileage reimbursement will remain at 55 cents per hour. This is the amendment. An aye vote means you are in favor of the amendment and level funding. A no vote means you do not want this amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. No. The noes appear to have it. The noes have it, and the amendment fails. So we are back to the original article, which I will read again. Article 3. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses? The town clerk, $34,608 annual salary. Town treasurer, $34,608 annual salary. Listers, $13.91 per hour. Other elected or appointed officials, $8.46 per hour, and mileage reimbursement at 55 cents per mile. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Katz.
Todd, did I hear you correctly that you and Chris have recused yourselves from?
Lori.
Lori, are you Lori? Okay, thank you.
Is it all there? Salary.
Is there any further discussion? Are you ready to vote on Article 3? Article 3. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses as written in your town report? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Article 3 passes. Article 4. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the current fiscal year and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid? Is there a motion? Greg Record has moved.
Second.
And that's Ken McFadden. Is there any discussion? Yes, in back.
I would like to move that we amend that to be 0.5% for the first year and 1% something over a year. Simply because, as Mr. Cass pointed out, a lot of people are having a lot of financial troubles. It seems to me that at the same time as we're cutting down on people's earned income credit, we're taking away their Social Security, jobs are not really coming back at a great rate, that it would not kill the town of South Newfane to give a little bit of forbearance. Not that we're encouraging people not to pay their taxes, but for the most part, people do not pay their taxes because they cannot. And I would like to make this amendment so to ease the burden. Undoubtedly, if people don't pay their taxes, then there needs to be some penalty for it. But I don't understand why we have to pay the absolute maximum required by law. 1.5% per month is 18% a year. That's like an usurious credit card rate. I think it's atrocious for a town to do that in times.
Okay. Dan, two things. Just need your numbers again, which we're changing one to 0.5%, and the other one? 1.5 to 1%. And we need to know if that's seconded. And Carol Hatcher. All right. And now we could have discussion, but I guess you've jumped the gun there. Yes.
Marshall Glickman, Williamsville. This is probably my last day as collector of delinquent taxes for 6 years. And I'm sort of politically, spiritually, whatever, I agree with Dan, but the practical reality of being in that position, I do think it needs to be a really harsh rate. You can, as Dan said, it's basically similar to what some credit card companies charge, and we need that. We need to have it be a high rate so people are highly motivated to pay. The majority of our delinquencies, just in sheer numbers and notices and time, are for people who are in Canoli Village or out of state, and their amounts are not very much. So if they just go, it's another 50 cents or something, I think they need that high number to be motivated. And in general, I think we need a high number. And if people don't pay their taxes, it's a huge inconvenience for the town. It throws off budgeting, it throws off other things. I think it needs to be this rate. And I have no self-interest at all in this. I never did receive that money, but certainly now that I'm not part of that position, I just feel having sat in that seat, I think it's the last thing. Not the way we have it now.
Maureen, actually behind you, Bruce.
Maureen Albert Piasek. I just want to make the statement that the current year taxes, it is usually the second homeowners that are, I'd say a good 65–70%, that are always late on their taxes and not the residents so much as the town voters.
Bruce Hasselbeck. I would just like to make 2 points. One is, I believe there is a procedure for abatement of taxes in the case of a catastrophe. So, for example, if someone had a heart attack and was unable to work, they might be able to apply for abatement of taxes. The select board would know more about that. I think most of the people who fall behind are people who actually could pay, but they have, say they have 10 different types of debt, and they decide that this is one they can get along without paying, but they'll pay other ones where they're being harassed more. I think in the past, we've had a lot of problems with delinquent taxes. They've gone up into hundreds of thousands of dollars. They've ballooned up. Marshall Glickman has done an admirable job of bringing those numbers down. It's a hardship, I think, for the whole town to have to carry a large quantity of unpaid taxes. So I think we should keep the penalties the way they are.
Is there anyone who wants to speak to this amendment? Yes.
I just have a question. What are the current rates and interest rates right now?
As stated, does anyone want to answer that? I'm not supposed to answer things. Yeah.
The interest rates are the same as Article 4. It's not changed.
All right, so the interest rates currently are the same as stated in Article 4. Is there any other discussion? Yes, sir.
David Roberts.
Stand up, please.
David Roberts. Just a question of curiosity. There's also in page 37, it says 8% delinquency penalty in addition to the interest, 1.5%, and maybe you could explain what that is, the 8%. What the, through her, I'm asking you.
Yes. Marshall, please, if you can explain that.
Sure. That's essentially how the collector delinquent taxes is compensated. There is no, like, there's various fees for town officials. It's a way that it doesn't cost the town anything for the collection. It essentially comes from the delinquent tax code.
Did everybody hear and understand that? Okay, Marshall, I think you're speaking very quietly and quickly, so if you could speak up, and there's a mic if you'd like it. Okay, but slow down. No. I just want everybody to know this is an unpaid job.
The 8% compensates the collector delinquent taxes for the fund job, and it doesn't cost the town anything for that collection, essentially, is what it does. The one thing I will add is it's very painful for any taxpayer when they miss just their April statement, they get whacked with the penalty and 8%. So anyone who's here, do not be late on your last statement. If there's anything, it's really expensive and frustrating. So make sure you pay that.
Thank you. Yes.
Carol,
Yeah.
I just want to say that several years ago, I think we can all make up our mind on this issue, but several years ago, I had a neighbor who they both lost their jobs, and they could not pay their taxes. And it was gut-wrenching to them, and they are residents. So I just want to let you know that it does happen to residents. It's not just about second homeowners. And yes, so I just want to say that maybe in this tough time, we ought to think about that. We ought to think about a little bit of compassion for our neighbors. I think we'll still be able to pay the tax collector, and we'll survive just fine. And certainly, as the economy grows, people get their jobs back, et cetera, we can use that next year.
And Dan, this is your second time.
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, we just heard you were late on your taxes, you pay an 8% penalty. That is huge, as Marshall said. That is a major incentive to pay your taxes. Secondly, the reason that we've had such great tax collections since Marshall took the job is because he gets on people about paying their taxes. It's the active engagement with the tax collector, if you will, that promotes people to actually pay their taxes. Thirdly, Marshall made an excellent point that spiritually and morally he's with me. So are we going to change ourselves? Are we going to, as a town, become a business? Are we nothing but a business that cares, people's welfare and community? Those are important, but they're really not as important as the bottom line of dollars and cents. I don't think that's really what a town is about. And I think this is the case with our town functions. Obviously, we have bills, we have to pay our bills. We're not talking about no charge. We're talking about just lowering the interest rates. Try it for a year. If our tax bill, our delinquent taxes balloon beyond the limit, then next year we'll jack them back up. But I think to constantly reduce everything to dollars and cents, when you're talking about people's lives, when you're talking about community, when you're talking about taking care of each other, I think that's a really bad mistake. And as a point of order, Marshall has spoken twice, and I disagree with him. The only being able to speak twice in any article is an arbitrary thing, so I would move that we overrule that and allow Marshall to speak a third time.
What is the ruling of the House? This is your assemble. Shall we allow Marshall Glickman to speak a third time on this amendment? Yes. Anyone opposed? All right.
Could we get a microphone over there?
Yes.
I can try for your
Dan, when I said, morally, spiritually, there's times when, you can be with something on a principle, but then you have sort of the practical aspect of it. I mean, I won't go into details of that, but just in everyone's life, there can be something you're kind of for, but there's a moment you might need a little tough love, for lack of a better word. In terms of, I mean, the way I ran the office, anyone who is late a year on their taxes, I just send notices. And anyone who's, especially a resident, but anyone, I always tried to work out payment plans with people. And they didn't even get any sort of, consideration for tax sale until at least, at the soonest, 2 years of being late. So it's actually sort of 3 years after what the taxes would have been due. And at that point, they're in a deep enough hole, they really need to be paying attention to what's going on. And with the option of a payment plan, there's a lot of flexibility. So it's not like people are just being tossed out in the street. I don't think this makes the town a business. I think it's a practical decision that, we see we're arguing about whether we can pay our people $35,000 a year. That's a low wage. And I think this is part of fundraising. It's part of the harshness of capitalism, essentially, is what we're looking at. But it is tough, and people can't make payments on their house. It's a tough situation. But I still think it makes good progress.
Is there further discussion?
Well, to the question, is or are the late payment interest penalties and or the 8% penalty imposed if a plan is worked out with the tardy taxpayer?
I'm going to have to defer to Marshall to answer the question.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion and a point that hasn't been made, or someone who has not spoken to this amendment? Yes. Please stand up.
Margaret Winberger. I don't know where in the procedure this would come in.
We're talking about the amendment, yeah.
All right. Well, what I have often thought would be better is for that 8% number to come down rather than the interest rate number. I think that's a lot. And I don't know where we go to.
That we have to vote on this amendment. That would be another amendment. Yes. I do know. I do see that the governor is here, and we have a lot of business. Yes.
Kim Friedman, South Newfane. I'd like to call the question on the amendment.
Is there a second? Okay. So we are calling the question on the amendment. We need a 2/3. Todd seconded it. So we're calling the question. We need a 2/3 majority to call the question. All those in favor of ending debate on the amendment to Article 4, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and we end debate. If you're ready, we will now vote on the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment would be in favor of reducing the amount of money the town of Newfane charges for late taxes from, I'll just read it, Article 4 as amended. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for the interest being at a maximum legal rate of 0.5% per month for the current fiscal year and 1% per month for each month thereafter until paid. Those voting aye will be voting in favor of the article as amended, and those opposed would be defeating the amendment. All those. Is this a point of order?
Yes. It wouldn't be at the full legal amount. You'd be lowering it?
This is right. This is lowering it from the way it reads right now. All those in favor of the article as amended, which is to lower the rates.
Your statement says legal rate. The maximum. It's not the maximum.
So we would have to change the amendment to strike out the words, the maximum legal rate. Is that how you would like that to read? Shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for interest being at the rate of 0.5% per month for the current fiscal year and 1% per month for each month thereafter until paid? All those in favor? Is this a point of order?
Question of clarity.
Yes.
I believe I believe we just voted to close debate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe we have a motion to amend the article on the floor first before we vote on the article.
We are voting on the amendment right now. That's where we are.
He's saying the amendment changed because of the word legal. All you're voting on is to change the 1% and 1.5%, not on the whole article.
That's correct. That is correct. Yes.
Point of order, I don't believe that you can amend the article as stated by deleting maximum rate without that also being a separate amendment on which we vote.
Yes. At this point, I am going to ask that we recess entirely to decide whether or not we're going to allow the governor, who's waiting patiently while we talk about these things, to address us. It will take a 2/3 majority from you to allow the governor to speak. So, all those in favor of allowing Governor Peter Shumlin to address us, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying nay. The ayes appear to have it. It is my great pleasure to introduce Peter Shumlin to you.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Newfane. That was a close vote. Listen, I can see you're busy, and so I'll try to be brief. I wanted to just come down and, first of all, say thank you to Newfane. You know, first governor in almost 50 years from Windham County, from southern Vermont, and I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And as some have said, that's for sure. 203 vote landslide, wasn't it? Yeah, 2 years ago. Hey, listen, I can see your heart at it, and this is what makes Vermont's democracy so great. So I just want to tell you a couple of things that we're up to, answer a few questions if we can, and get out of your way. Just to start off, you know, we're making some progress, and when you elected me, I said we were going to get some tough things done. If you agree with everything that we're doing, there's probably something drastically wrong with you. But we're making some real progress. And here's the good news. When I started out 2 years and 2 months ago in this job, and I went and visited employers, they would say to me often, hey, Gov, you know, we're thinking about doing a layoff, or give us your number, we'll call you before we do. You know, the kind of call you love to get as a governor. And now they're saying something different. They're saying, hey, you know, we've got jobs. We've got jobs. We just can't find enough people qualified to do the jobs that we have. And that's a better problem to have. But as we focus on jobs and prosperity, because we know most Vermonters have been working with stagnant incomes for the last decade, which is our biggest challenge, and our unemployment rate is actually better than most states. We're now the 6th lowest unemployment rate in America. We've got more green, clean, high-tech jobs per capita than any other state in the country. We were the only we're the fastest growth rate in Northeast, including that state we see over there to our east that sometimes brags that they're better than we are about jobs and economic development. And we were the only state in 2011, the only state in America that saw income growth. Now, it was only 4%, but guess what? That's 4% better than the rest of America. So the question is, how do we keep it going? So this is what we're trying to do. In addition to balancing budgets and being smart about how we manage our money, which is what you're trying to do right here, and Vermonters do that well, we are growing jobs by doing the following. Implementing renewable energy as quickly as we can. I'm proud to say that since I've been governor, we have doubled the number of solar panels in the state. Doubled them in just 2 years. While we do energy efficiency and we harness the wind and the sun and our streams and our biomass and our cow manure, you name it, it allows us to move from aging, leaking nuclear power plants to a more community-based green power future. So we're going to continue to work very hard on that to make sure that Vermont leads. As we know from Irene, climate change, our biggest challenge. We're doing well, and we're creating green jobs because of it. Second, we're working really hard to ensure that we deliver on my promise of high-speed internet access to every last mile of Vermont by the end of this year. Now, I know there's been some debate about how we're doing that, and where towers should go, and so forth, and that's what makes Vermont great. But if the towers go up, and I understand you've worked out a place in Newfane to put one, we will deliver on the promise of high-speed internet access by the end of this year. That's a big deal. We were behind, when I took over, we were behind Croatia, we were behind Vietnam, we were behind Cambodia, we were behind most of the developing countries and most of the 49 states. And we brought together the providers, put in some public money. Cell service is going to be marginally better, but high-speed internet access to every last mile we're going to deliver on. Third, and that's critical to job growth as well as to our quality of lives. We all know that. Third, and by the way, Windham County's the tail wagging a dog on this one. We're the last places to get hooked up. That shouldn't surprise any of you, but we're spending the money to get it done. Third, we're working very hard to ensure that we, in 2017, move to the first sensible single-payer healthcare system in America, where healthcare is a right and not a privilege, and where we spend our money on making people better. We spend our money on actually getting people better, getting insurance companies off doctors and providers' backs, letting them practice medicine again. It's a radical idea. As well as cutting the cost curve, because we all know the rate of growth is not sustainable. Now, huge challenges. We can do it. We will do it. I'm convinced when we do it, that the rest of America will follow us, because it's going to be a huge jobs creator. The budgets you're debating now, your school budget, your municipal budgets, what's driving those budgets is healthcare costs. So it's not just a question for small businesses who are struggling to give their employees insurance at costs that can't be sustained. It's also what's driving your property tax rates. So we've got to find ways to do health care more sensibly, and we're doing that. And finally, I just want to say a word about education, what I started with. So, you all know that we spend more per capita on education than all states except one in this great nation. And we have a great education system in Vermont. We've got a lot to be proud of. We have the highest graduation rates from high school of any state in the nation, period, bar none. That's not because we don't spend money. It's because we're willing to invest in education. I'm saying let's make a great system the best. And what do I mean by that? When I go around the state and I talk to employers, they say, Governor, we need more graduates in science, math. Looking at Alan Darrow, I'm thinking of Dan Darrow, who tried to teach me science. If you can teach me science, you can teach anyone science. Science, math, technology, and engineering. And that's what they need. And, my commitment is to grow jobs everywhere, not just Chittenden County. And you can go down to, as an example, GS Precision, and talk to the CEO there, second-generation business. He'll say, listen, if you could find me enough engineers and people trained in basic math, I could grow this business 25% this year alone. I just can't find them. And you hear that across the state. So what have I proposed? I dedicated my entire inaugural address to creating that education system, taking the system we have and making it even better. What have I said? Here's the challenge. With all the good work that we've done on Act 60 and 68 and equalizing education rates across the state, we have the most progressive education funding system in America, bar none, where no community gets left out in terms of property wealth, being able to spend more money than communities that aren't property wealthy. All that work we've done, we haven't moved the needle one little iota in terms of moving low-income kids, poor kids, beyond high school. Now, why is that so important? Because my parents' generation, and many of yours, a high school degree in Vermont meant a good wage, and a good life, and a good manufacturing job. And today, plain English, it doesn't. It means a low-wage job for life. So we got to get more kids beyond high school. It doesn't mean everyone's got to have a 4-year degree, and everyone's got to have a PhD. It means we got to get more kids to Vermont Tech and our state college system, and just more training beyond high school. Plumbers, electricians, folks that can do work at better wages than what high school degree will allow you. So this is what I've said. Here's the package in brief. I have said, let's say to any Vermont kid that graduates starting at the top from one of our colleges, or state colleges, or UVM, If they stay in this state and get a job in a STEM science, we will pay their entire last year of college, the whole year of tuition, if they stay here 5 years and work. That's a good investment for us. Second, if they get a 2-year degree, an associate's degree, we'll pay the whole last semester. Just a smart way of spending money we're already spending, sending to institutions without categories and how we're spending it. That's how we want to spend it, on Vermont kids staying here doing work. Third, I've said in high school, this is a little controversial, I know. I said, listen, math is critical. If we're not graduating kids that can do basic math, we're in big trouble. Now here's how it works in Vermont right now. We're doing pretty well in elementary school up through 8th grade. If you look at math scores, we're at about 68% compared to the rest of the nation on those awful kneecaps. But they do tell us something, 68%. When we get to high school, we drop down to 43%. So you got to ask, well, what's happening between grade school and high school? We're still spending $15,500 per pupil average. The answer is that only 47% of Vermont high schools require algebra by 9th grade, and only 32% require geometry by 10th grade. And in 11th grade, when you take the test, it's based on the algebra and geometry that everyone else is learning. And if you open up the book and you haven't taken either, you're going to have a tough time doing well on the test. So this is pretty basic stuff. What I'm saying is require that by 9th grade, every kid has taken algebra, and by 10th grade, every kid has taken geometry. Now, let me tell you something. If you can teach Pete Shumlin, the dyslexic kid from Putney, who's bombed out in math, algebra and geometry, which I struggled through, any kid in Vermont can do the same thing. So, finally, I've said in grade school, let's tailor the plan so that we have each kid as an individualized plan based upon their style of learning, starting with internships and apprenticeships and relating career to income. Bring in the plumber. Tell them what they had to do, where they had to go to school to get their degree, what they make an hour. Bring in someone who's working at McDee's. Tell them where they went, what they're making an hour. Bring in the brain surgeon. Tell them what they had to do, and get them in doing internships and apprenticeships so that every kid has some basic understanding of the link between how they do what they do and where they'll get right here in the state of Vermont. And finally, I've said this. Let's make the biggest single investment in early childhood education in the history of the state of Vermont, period. Because we know that every dollar we spend on early childhood education saves us $7 later on, but more importantly, forget the money, the kids succeed. Now here's our problem. If we haven't moved the needle on low-income kids getting beyond high school, we also haven't moved the needle getting enough low-income kids quality early childhood education, period. So this is where it gets a little controversial, and I want to tell you my thinking here. I have said, since there is no new money, there's no new pot of gold, we got to spend the money we're spending better now. I have said, let's take a portion of the Vermont match to the federal earned income tax credit. Now, the federal income tax credit is a great program, one of the greatest poverty fighters in America. 27 states don't match the earned income tax credit on a federal level at all. Vermont is one of the states that does, the minority of states. Vermont has the second most generous match in America. For various reasons I won't bore you with, our share of the federal income tax credit, the state's match, has gone up 49% in 8 years, the worst recession in American history, where other programs have been slashed. And I say, if policymakers in Montpelier had sat down 8 years ago with the scarce resources that we had and asked this question, are we better off increasing the match to the earned income tax credit by 49% to a check that goes out to families once a year, or would we spend some of that money on low-income families in better ways? I bet they would have said, wait a minute, let's spend it on their kids. Because if we give their kids a strong start and we put kids first, those kids are more likely to succeed. So I have proposed reducing Vermont's share. So for your overall credit, federal and state, you'd see a 15% reduction on a program that's gone up 49% in 8 years, and dedicating that $17 million to the kids of those families. Let me tell you why it makes super sense. Vermont is the only state left in America that has a timeless, no limit on reach-up welfare benefits. We have no limit. My belief about reach-up is that it should be temporary, not timeless, and we should give the support so that everybody can join in the workforce. Here's a stark example of what happens to me as governor. I went over just over the hill here to Sonex Industries. Now, Sonex is a company that does secondary auto parts. They started in a little garage in Putney that we used to rent to Neil Joseph when I was on the Board of Selectmen there 20, 30 years ago. He built it up, moved it to Rockingham, employs 130, 140 people. They're doing great. At the end of the tour, you know, the CEO called me and he said, "Governor, why do you have a welfare reach-out system that punishes people?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, let me tell you this story." He said, "I hired a woman from Brattleboro. She got pregnant when she was 15. She had 3 kids. When she could get the 2 youngest into childcare, she came to work for us. She was great. We loved her. She loved us. First job in her life. She's incredibly bright. She felt so good about herself. She comes in on Friday in tears, 4th Friday of the paycheck time, and said, 'I got to quit.' And he said, 'Why are you quitting?' She was in tears. She said, 'I'm quitting because the system in Vermont takes away, because of my income now, my child care benefit, part of my housing subsidy, and I can't afford to feed my kids and work for you.' So you know what he said? 'Well, let me give you a raise.' You know what she said? 'No, that makes it worse.'" So, you know, I'm being accused of being a little bit heartless. I say it is not compassionate to lock people in reach-up. It's not compassionate to tell that mom from Brattleboro that we're going to punish her if she gets a job, and if she gets a raise, we're going to make it even worse. So that's the system we're trying to change here. So all I'm saying is, you know, I know the press loves headlines, and, you know, Maine did this and it didn't work. Well, Maine, they didn't increase their child care benefit. They didn't give them job services. They didn't take care of their housing. They didn't give them additional food money, which we're doing. I mean, we're not the state of Maine, we're the state of Vermont. So all I'm saying is, if you happen to run into your legislator, you know, for every new idea in Montpelier, there's 10 advocates saying keep it just the way it is. I say if we can invest in early child education, we will move the needle on moving more low-income kids beyond high school, and we will move the needle in moving more people living in poverty to a more prosperous future and get everybody into the workforce. So that's it. Deb's ready to kill me? I went too long? No? If you have questions, I'd be happy to shed them. Dan?
Governor, thanks for coming. I think your ideas about early childhood education are really great. But you cited a number, $17 million, and you said there is no more money out there. But I would beg to differ with you. In this country, the Vermont tax system is based on the federal tax system. The federal tax system has favored the wealthy forever, including this latest tax hike, which is a joke. We have wealthy Vermonters who are asking, in full-page ads, raise our taxes. And yet you choose to focus on the people who get the earned income credit, who are the absolute, I used to get the earned income credit when I had kids for a while.
Yeah.
You don't make very much money to get the earned income credit. So
I know
you're
that.
asking those people at the very bottom who are working, by definition, you have the earned income credit, you're working, you're making a wage. You're asking them to put the $17 million. And you're not willing to raise the taxes on the wealthiest among us to try to come get that $17 million.
Okay, so
you say you don't want a broad-based tax, but you're willing to raise the gas tax, which also hits the poorest the hardest.
Okay, so let me answer your question. Okay, but let me just tell you why I disagree with you. And, you know, you and I often agree on issues. We disagree on this one. Let me tell you why. The premise to your argument that I disagree with is this. You're right. The federal government has had a tax policy that has let the top 1% get away with extraordinary tax benefits. However, President Obama just fixed that. And for the first time, it's true. He just fixed it. For the first time since 1972, the wealthiest Americans are paying higher taxes than they have, and that's a good thing. I support that. Second, we're working together with the President to close some of the loopholes for the wealthy that will even make that more fair. Third, in Vermont, we have the most progressive income tax in America. I support that. I helped write the tax policy. But my argument is you can't do it twice. We have 304 Vermonters paying 21 cents on every tax dollar in the state. 304 people paying 21 cents of every dollar. That's a good thing. But I argue that when you get up around 9, 10% on every dollar, 10 cents on every dollar, they have portability. There's New Hampshire. There's Florida. I bet everyone in this room can think of people we know who made good incomes who are now residents of Florida or residents of New Hampshire and other states. So my point is, there's a point of no return. I say we're there. Now, I know you won't agree with me on that, but I make that judgment as governor. So what I'm saying is, then when they make the argument, well, you're taking the money from poor people and giving them to poor people, that's not true. We're taking the money from you. The Earned Income Tax Credit, 80 cents of every dollar, it's not a tax credit, it comes out of the other taxpayers' pockets of the state of Vermont. So we're taking the money from the taxpayers of the state of Vermont and giving it to low-income kids. And I think that's the right thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. As a state official, and with us being on a municipality, everything sounds good, but what we're running into a great deal is that the support for municipal government, which is why you're here, is weakened by some of the very things you're looking for. That is, we've run into a situation where our local ordinance becomes meaningless, and this, in this case, the first of the cell tower cases that came to us. We were required to participate, but our input, when push came to shove at the PSB, became essentially preempted everything that had been done at the municipal level. So what I'm questioning is the ongoing support for the vibrancy of municipality. And I'll add the second thing that we really run into. We are chronically in a position of being between a rock and a hard place in terms of flood recovery. And I don't know how often you get this story, probably quite a bit. But between ANR, the state, between public assistance in the state, and FEMA, we are put in the position that our state officials refuse to commit. FEMA obligates and then de-obligates, and we're up against numbers that make you weren't here, but we spent the first portion of this meeting discussing salaries changes that were totaled $3,000. We have a danger of losing $300,000 or $400,000 based on arguments between PA, FEMA, and ANR. So what are you going to do to make our municipal government meaningful?
Well, let me just say that to start with the FEMA Irene discussion. Listen, there's no one that's fought harder for you to get the money that the feds ought to be giving us from FEMA than yours truly. Come on, team. We're not divided on this one. We're united. Who do you think's appealed every damn decision they've made? Who do you think's down there in Washington beating on them? It's my administration. We put a bill in the Sandy bill that Senator Leahy put in that would have fixed the problem. Here's the problem. The federal government, in their wisdom, believes that we should rebuild after a storm like Irene just the way they found us. Now, I don't think that's very smart. But in a place like Washington, D.C., where half of the Congress people deny that climate change is man-made, you can understand why they think that way. So ANR is partnering with you. I'm partnering with you. Senator Leahy, Senator Sanders, and Congressman Welch are partnering with you to try to get FEMA to change their standards so that when you rebuild from a storm like Irene, $1 billion worth of damage, they're not back here in 2 years with culverts that are too small and bridges that are too low, rebuilding all over again. So we're with you all the way. I think in the end, I hope we'll win that battle, but I can guarantee you there's no greater advocate for the cause than yours truly. Yeah.
I'd like to know what you think, what's your opinion on the labeling campaign, Vermont's Right to Know, which has a bill in the House, one in the Senate and the House, and one in the House just was voted through the
Ag Committee.
Agricultural Committee.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that? How do you feel about that?
I support labeling of food. I think consumers should know what they're eating, period. But I just want to add, so that I won't be called a hypocrite later, like most things in life, it's a little complicated. And here's the complication for Vermont. When Howard Dean was governor and I was president of the Senate, we passed a labeling bill, as you probably know, for RBST, which we were madly injecting into cow udders to get higher milk production. And we passed it, and of course the food industry, Monsanto and the rest, took us to court, Second Circuit, and they won. And there's a national debate going on going along right now among the people like you and I who support labeling, who are asking this question. Is Vermont the smartest place to test this question? It's exactly the same case. Go read the RBST case. The same Second Circuit Court that's right now considering Vermont Yankee. Are we smart in taking a state that's cheap to litigate, that has to repay legal expenses, and that has already made the decision on this question on the RBST not in our favor? So I just want you to know that debate is going on, and we should think about it.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say I'm really grateful to have you in the governor's office. I just feel it's great to have an activist governor who's actually getting a lot of stuff done. So,
thanks, Marshall. Appreciate it. Maybe I better get out of here on this one. You got a lot of work to do. You got a pending question. I bet Deb's figured out the parliamentary move, the next move. But listen, thanks so much for having me. Call us, write us, come visit us. It's lonely up there at the top. Thanks for having us in.
Thank you. Please get your coffee and cookies and support the 6th grade trip. And we will now reconvene. I just want to point out that one of the things we're told every year up in Montpelier when we go to the moderators' meeting is that moderation is a lot like medicine. It is not an exact science. All right? I also want to remind everybody that we can modify Robert's Rules of Order. We cannot change state law. So where we are right now, we could go through the entire Robert's Rules to fix the omission in the amendment. And we could take a recess for lunch and come back this afternoon. Or with unanimous consent, we could amend the amendment now to eliminate the words at the maximum legal rate. We can do this. You can do this. This is your meeting, okay? And I invite you to let me know how you want to do this, all right? I also see that Dick Merrick is here, barely out of bed from yet another bout of flu. And Dick, we're just going to let you rest a little longer, okay? So, if there is no objection, I would like to reconvene with a vote on the amendment and have it read with the words at the maximum legal rate struck out. So, I'm going to wait a little bit to hear if there's an objection. Hearing none, we're going to proceed with a vote, and I am going to read the amendment. I'm going to read the article as amended, and then we'll vote. So the article, as you have agreed to amend it, is, shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for interest being at the rate of 0.5% per month for the current fiscal year and 1% per month for each year thereafter until paid. For each month thereafter until paid. A yes vote is for these changes. A no vote will revert it back to the way it's originally written. Any questions? All those in favor of the article as amended, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no? No. The noes appear to have it. The noes have it, and the amendment is defeated. We're back to the original article. Is there any further discussion? I'll take that as that you're ready to vote on Article 4 as written. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the current fiscal year and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid. A yes vote will pass the article as amended, and a no vote will defeat it. The article is written, and a no vote will defeat it. All those in favor of the article as written, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Article 4 passes as written. Article 5. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to sell or otherwise convey property acquired through tax sale proceedings? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Myra Fassler. Second. Tom Bedell. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. An aye vote means you're in favor of Article 5. A no vote means you're not. Article 5. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to sell or otherwise convey property acquired through tax sale proceedings? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. Article 5 passes. Article 6 is the beginning of our special appropriations, which are budgeted on page 16, and the articles here are articles above $1,000 or appearing for the first time. These are our town rules, and we need town rules and also require that someone speak to each article. Article 6. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,125 by taxation for the Visiting Nurses Association of Vermont and New Hampshire? It is in the budget on, you can read about it on page 56. Is there a motion? Yes? Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Is there, you've made the motion. Do you want to speak to it?
Yes. Last year, the Visiting Nurse Service made 671 home care visits to 20 people in Newfane and absorbed approximately $16,500 unreimbursed charges.
Is there any further discussion? Are you ready to vote? We're voting on Article 6. Shall the voters, an aye vote is in favor, a no vote is not. Article 6, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,125 by taxation for the Visiting Nurse Association of Vermont and New Hampshire? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The motion passes. Article 7, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,675 by taxation for Valley Cares Incorporated. This is in the budget, and more information is on page 54. Is there a motion? Gunther Garby moves. Is there a second? Bob Lyons seconds it. Is there any discussion? Is there someone in the House to speak?
Record. This is my final year on that board. We have term limits, so I will not be addressing this next year. In a nutshell, Madam Moderator spoke on page 54. In essence, it's level funded, $1.55 per capita.
Any further discussion? Sorry.
Madam Chairman, I'm just curious, with the cost of everything going up for Valley Cares, would it not be appropriate to have raised that somewhat, because there's a whole lot of business that's being taken care of for the elderly? And so just to have it level funded for myself means that we aren't responding to some of the needs that are out there. Gloria Cristelli.
Gloria, are you proposing an amendment? Is there any further discussion? You ready to vote? We're voting on Article 7. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,675 by taxation for Valley Cares Incorporated? All those in favor of this appropriation, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. The article passes. Article 8. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 by taxation for Grace Cottage Hospital? This is in the budget, and more information is on page 48. Is there a motion? Neil Pelso is making a motion. Is there a second? Greg Record's making a second. Is there any discussion? Are you going to speak to it, Neil, please?
I don't recall what page the report is on, but I do remember very clearly that the non-reimbursed care cost is somewhere in the order of $1 million. $2,500 doesn't offset that by a large measure, but it certainly will help out with very.
Is there any further discussion? You ready to vote? We're voting on Article 8. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 by taxation for Grace Cottage Hospital? All those in favor of this appropriation, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the article passes. Article 9. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500 by taxation for the American Red Cross? This is in the budget, but I couldn't find a report, and I don't know if anyone else did. Is there a motion? I actually am indicating, acknowledging Dan Sainer. You're making the motion. Are you seconding it? Fred Bacon is seconding it. Is there any discussion? We need someone in the House to speak to this. Dan?
Dan Sanders, South Newfane. I'm a volunteer with the Red Cross. It's not in the report because it probably hasn't been appropriated for a couple of years. These funds, as you know, the Red Cross is not a federal agency. The funds are used for local disasters that are appropriated from these communities. We're averaging 2 to 3 fires, generally a house fire, apartments in the chapter. Again, these funds do not leave the local disaster funding, and we've been averaging 2 to 3 fires a month in the chapter, which is the state of Vermont. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of Article 9, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500 by taxation for the American Red Cross, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. The article passes. Article 10. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,150 for senior solutions? This is in the budget, and more information is on page 51. Is there someone to make the motion? Yeah. Nancy Rigas made the motion. Is there a second? Christine Gray has made a second. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Gave raises today, and these people are not getting any raises at all. They certainly help with meals, they help with case management, and the senior health line is actually very popular. There's, in fact, they have a whole page list I could read off that we don't want to go over. It's just, you know, it's a time issue, but frankly, I think they deserve actually more, but I would go with this motion.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, just so that people understand, we put as just a matter of practice, it's not actually law, but practice, into the budget, into the articles, anything over 2,000 or anything that's an increase from a previous year. This is an increase of $400, which was presented to the select board, and we did feel it should be appropriated.
Thank you. Any other discussion? You ready to vote? We're voting on Article 10. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,150 for senior solutions? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and Article 10 passes. Article 11. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,100 for Southern Vermont Economic Development Strategies, CVEDS? Is there a motion? Yes.
Luke Stafford.
Okay, Luke Stafford has made the motion. All right, is there a second? Tom Bedell has made a second. Is there any discussion?
Luke Stafford, South Newfane. I went to a SEVID meeting the other day, and there's some pretty grave statistics out there about the opportunities for young people. Vermont's the second oldest state in the country, and Windham County is the oldest county in Vermont. So SEVID is addressing that, and they're trying to, they're very organized, and they've got great plans to help the economy in southeastern Vermont here and get more opportunities for young people and young families that might want to move here or stay here. So it's a great program.
Yes? Discussion?
For the record, I just wondered if someone could answer why it's $5,100 with that amount.
Gloria?
When it was presented to the select board, it was $3 a head, and so I'm assuming that includes the babies, because when I took the population, the 2010 census, and then cranked it in, that's what it was.
Go ahead.
This was presented to the select board. You will note that it is not actually in the budget. We did feel that it was something that the town as a whole at this meeting should be thinking about and making a reasoned decision on.
Oh, I just heard from, I think, the newest resident of the town of Newfane. Not a registered voter.
I wonder if Luke or somebody could give us a brief idea of
research about the economy here. They've already hired a company to do initial statistics just about demographics and the age of people here and how many people are retiring and the fact that a lot of Brattleboro people are working in Keene or down in Massachusetts. So I think it's, right now it's about the research and then action will follow.
Someone just handed me this setup book, which has plenty of stuff.
And I do draw your attention to all kinds of reading matter and information up here at the front of the table. I believe this one is the one that you're looking for. This is, looks like the one that Charlie has. Is there any further discussion? People want a minute to look at this? Yes? Tom? You defers to Lynn?
I'm bringing it up this time because I've been thinking that as you go down the list of social services. And so I'm not asking any questions on this.
Speak up.
Here.
I said I've been thinking about this as we're looking at these, and I don't mean to single out to speak right now for this particular agency in particular, but it would help me, and I think it would help other taxpayers, if we had a clearer understanding of what services are provided here. I know they all do their little blurb, but for example, I'm looking at these and I'm seeing some organizations that do a good deal of work, like Senior Solutions and their case managers, work really hard in Newfane. They have a lot of clients in Newfane, I know for a fact. They cannot turn anybody away. They have to work with these people. We should be really supporting them. There are other agencies here, if they're too much work, they can say, nah, I don't want to do that. So I think that it would help me, and I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, if there were an analysis, and more in-depth analysis about what these organizations are doing for our town and what their criteria are. I mean, somebody that has to take on the most difficult cases regardless, in my mind, deserves more of a boost than an agency that can say this is too much work for us, we're not sending somebody out there. And I see that happening. And now with this agency, I'm sure they're doing good work, but should we be spending that much money and not as much on Senior Solutions? You know what I'm saying? And as I said, I didn't mean to pick on this agency in particular, but I would love to see a little more in-depth look at what we're doing with the money. And I'm not for a moment saying we shouldn't be supporting these agencies.
So, can you speak to that?
Yes. To be honest, what we do, and obviously we would listen to town folk if there's further input, is unless there is an explicit request, we level fund the social services. This is something entirely new. This is not something the town has previously funded. And so we're passing this on to you. We were given a presentation, some town folks were at the meeting, but beyond that, I think what you have written is pretty much what we have. I'm somewhat surprised we don't have someone here to speak to this issue.
Any further discussion?
Well, my question was to the board. You had the presentation. Somebody could probably give some sense of. You thought well enough of it to bring it before the town. Right.
Yes, Chris.
Chris Anthony, Boston 6, Vermont Route 30. I can speak a bit to it. I'm also the director of the Wyndham Regional Commission. The Southeast Vermont Economic Development Strategy has been in process actually for a number of years. It's really the first coordinated effort among a lot of different groups within the Wyndham region. That's the 27 towns. The 23 towns in Wyndham County, 3 towns in Bennington County, one town in Windsor County, to do a comprehensive economic development strategy for the region as a whole and do economic development planning. This really hasn't been done, and frankly needs to be done. And the work is coordinated by the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, which is the regional development corporation for
enough build capacity to actually then begin implementing what strategy emerges. Right now, they're in the process of developing what's called a certified economic development strategy, which would allow the Wyndham region as a whole to access funding and support through the U.S. Economic Development Administration. That's something that currently Vermont as a whole really doesn't participate much in. There are resources that, frankly, we've been leaving on the table. But there's an opportunity here to, in addition to all the other good planning work that we do, to actually really focus on the economic development issues. And that's basically it in a nutshell.
Yes, sir.
John Spicer, do we know if this is being presented to the other towns in town meetings?
No.
They've tried to get it onto the warnings for all the towns. Frankly, I don't know how many they were successful in. Brattleboro provided, I believe it's $25,000, and said that they would make all of that available if other towns would contribute to making another $25,000 match. I believe those were the numbers. I know it's on the Putney warning. I'm not sure what other warnings they're able to get it onto.
Yes, sir.
David Howard, folks. To that question on page 23 of this handout, there is a budget, a projected budget or a budget target for the project. And it shows a total of income of $58,000. And I'm wondering if this amount would be in addition to that on that budget. Well, on page 13 of this handout, which I think is what the page does here, there is a budget for Southeast Vermont economic development strategy that they presented, and for the year fiscal year 2013, it says total income would be $58,625, but they don't see anything in there that would reflect any of these contributions from the towns, whether from Brattleboro or anyone else. So my question then is, would this amount be added to that budget that they currently have added for?
Is there anyone here who can answer David Roberts' question? I don't see that there's anyone here. That's it. I'm sorry, Mike.
Do we know how much we have given Council on the Aging in the past? Because my understanding, according to reading this, is that the names change.
Yes, and
Council on Aging,
which is now called Senior Solutions. So we voted on that already. Any other? Yes.
Are we still on the SWIM, this one?
We're on chapter, Article 11.
Yes. My name is Danny Landberger. I live in Williamsville. I just live in Leland and Gray. I think anything we can do regionally to find innovative, creative, and environmentally safe ways to keep our young people coming back and keep young families moving into our area is essential for the vitality of our region and all regions in Vermont. Cabot High School, I just heard on NPR this morning, is down to 65 kids. And they're staying open at Leland and Gray, as you know, as with the local elementary schools. Populations are declining. I mean, in part it's because kids aren't having babies so much anymore, but I can't help that. I'm just saying that anything we can do to put creative minds to work, to keep people coming in wonderful new ways is a good idea.
Is there any further discussion? Yes.
with all due respect, it sounds like we don't know very much at all about this organization. And, anyone can come in the door and ask for resources from the town. I know our inclination is to be supportive of everybody we can. But don't we have to draw a line that at least says, tell us enough about what you're doing and how it will impact Newfane so we can make an informed decision?
Yes. In back.
Bud Bergman, South Newfane. I'm guessing I'm like many people here, we're of sort of mixed mind about this. We don't really understand it, and reading it, God help, we need help. We need, the culture has got to change here if we're going to see some new people and some business. So I guess on balance, I guess I'd say I'd give it a shot, but you know, I certainly have doubts. That's my feeling.
Before I acknowledge you, I do want to remind everybody that we do need to recess at 11 o'clock for the legally worn school meeting. Jody.
Jody from Last Mile Road. The handout that was up at the front table includes the list of the board members. Among the board members are Stephen Morse from Newfane, Patrick Moreland from Marlborough, Jeff Lewis, Brad Burrell, who's currently the executive director of Radical Development Credit Corporation, Bob Stevens, Stevens Associates, Dan Yates, Radical Savings and Loan, Barbara Sondag, County Manager of Radical, Drew Richards of Richards Insurance of Newfane. There's a lot of good folks on the list of board members that I believe have put in a lot of hard work and effort, and I'm willing to trust their judgment and would encourage folks to vote in favor of their request for funding, and would also say that it doesn't look like there are enough board members that they could have had someone at every town meeting. I'd like to thank Chris Campany for speaking knowledgeably about the organization, and I can't remember the other young man's name, but he attended a meeting. I would encourage folks to support the funding.
Yes.
Can I call the question?
You can call the question. We could also just ask if people are ready to vote.
Yes.
Ready to vote? Is there anyone who's not ready to vote? Okay, we're going to vote. We're voting on Article 11. And an aye vote is in support of this appropriation. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,100 for Southern Vermont economic development strategies? All those in favor of this appropriation, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and Article 11 passes. Town meeting is now going to recess and will reconvene after the school meeting, which is going to start in about 1 minute. Yes. I'd like to bring the Newfane School District 213 annual meeting to order. The legal voters of the town of Newfane, Vermont are hereby notified and warned to meet at, well, it's not the Union Hall. In said town, I am really sorry. I'm not sure this is going to be a legal meeting. We will continue with this meeting in Williamsville Hall, and we may have to meet again later on to ratify what we decide here. We are meeting on Tuesday, March 5th at 2013 at 11 a.m. to consider and act upon the following articles. Article 1 is by Australian ballot, and the polls are open until 7 p.m. Article 2 is to compensate the directors of the Newfane School District $200 each, and the Newfane School District Treasurer $2,300. Is there a motion? Doris Knetchel has made a motion. Is there a second? Bob Lyons has made a second. Is there discussion? It would be helpful if people could confine their conversation so we could continue this. I don't know if I'm the only one who's getting hungry, and noon is still looking a long way off. Thank you. There is a motion on the floor to compensate the directors of the Newfane School District $200 each, and the Newfane School District Treasurer $2,300. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? It was moved by Doris Knetchel, and it was seconded by Bob Lyons. It's been asked if there's a change from last year. Does anybody want to answer that? Maureen, you want to answer that question? Please, can everyone please just keep it down and pay attention? Speak up, please.
Yes, what I believe is as far as the new, it's Newbrook School Treasurer, this is Newfane School Treasurer, the 2,300 has been lowered from 2,800 due to the fact that there are a few duties that I'm no longer doing. Wyndham Central took over.
Okay, did you hear that? The amount has been lowered from 2,800 to 2,300 because Wyndham Central has taken over some of the duties. Is there any further discussion? So we're going to vote on Article 2. To compensate the directors of the Newfane School District $200 each and Newfane School District Treasurer $2,300. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and Article 2 passes. Article 3, to set the date of the annual meeting of the Newfane School District for the first Tuesday of March in the year of 2014. Is there a motion? This gentleman in back in a black sweatshirt. Thank you, and you're moving this motion. Okay, as written. Is there a second? Peter Lilienthal seconds it. Is there discussion? Hearing none. We will vote on Article 3 to set the date of the annual meeting of the Newfane School District for the first Tuesday of March in the year 2014. Article 4, to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. I do remind you that this would be non-binding since nothing else has been warned. Yes. I'm sorry. Whew. Article 3. We're going to vote to set the date of the annual, we're voting now. Thank you. To set the date of the annual meeting of the Newfane School District for the first Tuesday of March in the year of 2014. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes have it, and the article passes because we voted. Article. Peter Lilienthal? Is that correct, Peter? Yeah. Article 4, to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. And at this point, I would entertain any motion to thank the directors behind me.
Hi, I'm Kim Friedman, Chair of the Newfane School Board and Chair of the Brookline Newfane Joint Contract Board. As you probably know, the voters from the two towns approved the Newbrook school budget at our specially warned meeting on February 26th. So that, as you also know now, is not a decision that we make at this meeting. However, I did want to take this opportunity to highlight 4 things having to do with the business of the school board. First of all, I'd like to recognize the long service that Kim Colligan has provided on the Newfane and the Joint School Board for many years now. She has been, hold your applause, and then you can stand, give her a standing ovation. I just want to acknowledge the integrity, the persistence, the commitment, the sense of humor, and the dedicated service she's lent to the school board. She represented all of us on the negotiating committee for the master agreement for the teacher's contract, which was a 1.5-year long commitment. Her husband Ted will attest to the number of evenings she had to be out. So we are very grateful to her, and she will be very sorely missed. I'd also like to recognize Kathleen McEachern's short but very wonderful service on the school board. She needed to resign for personal reasons, which is a segue to my making a plea that if anybody is interested in serving on the joint school board representing Newfane, there are 2 empty seats. So we are, of the 5 seats, there are 2 empty seats as of today. So please contact me if you are interested in being part of this endeavor. Yes, and there's a Newfane opening on the Leland and Gray board as well, which is another segue to, to something that I wanted to share with everybody. A number of us, Neil Pelsu included, I don't believe Corey Stark is here, have been part of a 1.5-year-long discussion about some very exciting changes in the governance of the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union. 4 towns, Newfane, Brookline, Townsend, and Jamaica school boards, as well as the Leland and Gray School Board, have just submitted as of last week what are called Articles of Agreement to the State Board of Education, which, if approved, would radically and, in my view, in a very positive way, change the way that our schools in this area, affecting those 4 towns in Leland and Gray, are governed. Our school board is excited, very excited about this possibility, and please stay tuned because there's a tentative vote set for June 5th among those 4 towns to vote on a change in the school board structure for the Wyndham Central, for these towns in the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union. The other thing I wanted to mention is the joint school board has been looking at alternatives to replacing our aging boilers at Newbrook Elementary School. We have been, I want to recognize Ken McFadden's work in this area. He and Chris Pratt, the Newbrook principal, has spent a great deal of time in the last year researching options. We have engaged the services of an engineering firm in Rutland and are exploring 4 possibilities. One is replacing the boilers with new boilers, replacing the boilers with a wood pellet system, replacing the boilers with a geothermal system, and then the possibility of providing solar electricity through a photovoltaic system to meet Newbrook's energy needs. So that also will be coming before you for a possible bond vote sometime in the summer or fall. And of course, we'll be sending information out to all voters about that, but I also wanted everybody to know that that is on the horizon. So thank you, and thank you for all of your support of our wonderful school.
Can you remind everybody when and where you meet so that they could come and participate in your meetings?
As of now, we meet on the 3rd Thursday of every month at Newbrook Elementary School in the library at 6:30. It's possible that that meeting time will change, but chances are we'll stick with the 3rd Thursday of the month. Not only is everyone welcome to come, we would love to get more input.
And is there a website they can check to find out when and where meetings will be?
Yes, the Newbrook Elementary School website has all of our meeting minutes, our meeting agendas, information about how to reach any of us, and Chris Pratt does a wonderful job of keeping that updated.
Is there any other business to come before the school board? Yes, Greg.
Yes, Greg Rickard. I just wanted to, in light of this whole thing too, as far as participation goes, make you folks aware, it was kind of sad, and I thought, I went to both, as you know, I'm on the Board of Civil Authority. Leland and Gray budget, $6.8 million. Town of Newfane had 50 voters. 50 people showed up to the ballots, and we had 14 absentees, I think we were. Folks, $6.8 million. And God bless these folks, and this was a joint town, so Brookline was there. It wasn't really percentage-wise all that much headed that well either. So please tell your neighbors and friends, we've got to have better turnout. I mean, it was pointed out by Dan, you sit here, we argue over, I argue over $3,000. Here's the whole deal. You know, millions of dollars. All you gotta do is go and vote. We don't even have to go to meetings anymore. The only way is great about getting their newsletter out. The school board does a great job. Please, just get folks out. The system does work. I really, truly believe in it. I mean, I've been defeated here 5 years. It's supposed to go. Folks are going to have to say. That really is very, very poor to have a town of this size. Almost 1,300 voters. We had 50 people show up. It was all day long. So please, just get the word out.
My husband and I weren't able to make it to the school meeting because we didn't actually get a notice of it. We didn't actually get the annual reports. We missed the notice of the school meeting if it was published in the paper. It's just by tradition we know when this meeting is. So perhaps the giving of notice, I heard, I think last year, the statement that if you didn't have a Newfane zip code, you didn't get mailed things. I have the West Overton post office box. I would encourage the use of the voter checklist for giving notices if it's going to happen by mail.
I'm really glad, Jody, that you segued into the lack of getting the town reports. Town reports were sent to all voters of the town of Newfane. I have out, but there are numerous of you, and it seems to be with the ones because they were sorted by zip code, and yours was right on there, and they were sorted by then the addresses within the zip code. So it's a mystery to me as to why so many town reports didn't get there. I know it's a 1.5 didn't get there, a 189, a 133. So it's possible that something got misplaced. I'm not blaming the post office, but I have out on the bulletin board outside a complete list. This one sorted by your last name, and it has the address on it, the mailing address. So please go through and check that your mailing address is correct, because that is in the database of the voter checklist from the state, the HAVA database. So please do that. And then I do know that all of the meetings came to the postal boxes, so that would be not the town report. The town report was by your mailing label, so that might be something that Kim might want to address.
I'm very sorry I wasn't aware that there were Newfane or Brookline residents who didn't have a mailing address in either town. So I will follow up with Prospect Press, which does all of our school board mailings. I did want to just clarify for everybody, though, that this mailing did go out about a month before our warned joint town school board meeting on February 6th that had the information in it. And then when that meeting was recessed due to the snowstorm, all postal patrons in both towns, obviously you did not, got a follow-up mailing notifying everybody of the rescheduled joint school district meeting. So we are, I just mentioned that because I want you to know we're doing our very best to reach everybody, but I understand that this is a glitch and we will follow up.
Is there any other business or questions or comments for the school board? Is there a motion to adjourn the school board meeting? Is there a second? Second. And all those in favor of adjournment, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The school board meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. The Newfane Town meeting will reconvene. We are on Article 12. Article 12. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise the amount of $150,000 to be added to the Capital Reserve Fund to be solely dedicated for future capital needs? Gunther Garvey's made a motion. Myra Fassler has seconded it. Is there any discussion? I just stand up and make sure everybody can hear your quick question.
Meeting of the, Greg brought up before that last year was $125,000 that we put in capital.
Here.
I just said that earlier. Greg brought up that last year's contribution to the capital fund was $125,000, right? This year it's $150,000. Is there? Can, that's my question.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to, or not happy to speak to it. The fact is that we have to be prepared for the fact that we are going to have some unexpected expenses, all right, that is flood related. And also, what you do have in the budget this year that it includes capital, is there is $25,000 for toward the town hall is also included in the budget, as well as $5,000 for this building. So what has been happening is that we have chronically, and I really want the town to be aware of this, we have chronically underfunded capital projects for going back many years, with a consequence that we actually end up spending money from the general fund for capital expenses, which is not the way we should be doing it. So we're trying to bring it closer to reality by bringing it to 150.
Yes, sir.
Because town hall needs a huge amount of money for repairs, necessary repairs. What we have decided, in order to not cause too much controversy, to establish a committee, to establish a plan of action, and then come back to the town with a proposal of how to repair and improve town hall, the physical building.
I'm going to go here first.
On page 20, which lists the projected capital needs, 2012 to 2016, I'm just puzzled that there's one line item, the 1990 Mack dump truck, is listed for on one budget 165,000, and then the following year 220,000. Does that one truck require $385,000 worth of replacement?
Is there someone on the select board who can address this gentleman's question?
The 165 is in the wrong place. It should have been 2013 Mac. Yeah.
Stand up.
If you look at the page there under 2013 Mac, that was last year. That's where that 165 should have been. The 220 is for the 24-year-old Mac this year. So move that 165 up a notch to the 2013 Mac. It's just a misprint there.
You could also explain why this is a four-wheel versus a two-wheel drive.
Right. The 90 Mac is an all-wheel drive truck. It's one that's, like I said, it's 24 years old. It's done its work. It's starting to cost town quite a bit of money. That's why that's so much more money than the other truck, because it's an all-wheel drive truck.
Does that answer your question? Other questions or comments?
You're saying about if Gunther could just, what the committee is and who's the we who's looking into it? Is it a subcommittee of the board or something?
Gunther, do you want to? John's gonna answer your question.
It was brought before the board. There was a motion passed at the last select board meeting, basically to form a committee, and the starting point is Priscilla and Gunther had been interested in doing, and they are going to bring a recommendation to the new board, since it will not be the identical board you see here, which will then decide on whether that's a reasonable board and to move forward with making plans. So that will come back to the select board, and I certainly encourage people to come to the meetings and participate in that process.
And could you please remind everybody when you meet and where?
first and third Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. at the town offices, if they don't fall down before then.
All right. Any other discussion? Dan?
Town hall. We're talking about the town hall and the town clerk's office.
It's strictly speaking, the town clerk is in it, but it's the town offices. If I said town hall, I misspoke. It is the town offices. We actually we do not have a town hall as such. There's a union hall in Newfane, and there's this building here, but we do not have a quote town hall.
All right. Any other questions or comments on Article 12? We ready to vote? Article 12. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise the amount of $150,000 to be added to the Capital Reserve Fund to be solely dedicated for future capital needs? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes have it. The ayes appear to have it, and the ayes have it. The Article 12 passes. Point of order? What's your question?
Greg Record. Again, I'm just wondering on these following articles that were included. Is this in the budget already, or is someone adding this in?
No, it's in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I hope everybody heard that the Articles 13 and 14, the money is already in the budget. Article 13. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to authorize capital fund expenditures in the amount of $412,797 as proposed in the capital needs plan for fiscal year 2014? Is there a motion? Yes. So moved. All right. Is there a second? Did you get that, Myra, Tom? Is there discussion? Yes.
Kim Friedman, South Newfane. I have a question. Is the $220,000 in proposed borrowed funds, does that correspond to the $220,000 amount under highway equipment? And does that correspond to the purchase of the 1990 dump truck?
Well, we don't want to buy a 1990 again. It costs a lot less. No, it's to replace the 1990. That's correct.
We're on Article 13. Is there any further discussion or questions? Yes.
Greg Record, again, one of you folks would just clarify. Last year that was $267,871. Like clarification of why it's gone up.
Again, what page? Could I just?
Page 20.
Yeah, if you look at this, where's the 412 here, right? Okay. Yeah, we have set aside, in this case, and I think I kind of got ahead of myself in terms of the flood stuff, but we're setting aside $125,000 for the non-reimbursable portion of the flood expenses. That is an estimate, and I really want the town to understand where we stand with getting reimbursed for the expenses from the flood. We've done very well in moving things through the system, but the last mile is, as one might guess, the hardest, and there are some items which we're caught between, as I was saying to the governor, between state law and federal regulations, and where we are not getting clear enough answers from the federal government about what the rules are to be absolutely confident of what we're going to get back. Even if we got every penny we're entitled to, and every penny we've spent, there is a local portion of the flood expenses which is capped. Fortunately, to our benefit, it's capped at $81,000. So minimally, we would have $81,000 that would come out of town pockets. Probably it will be somewhat more. We have some ideas. I mean, we know what the issues are, but to project that we will win every battle and everything will go perfectly seems really over-optimistic. So we've set aside $125,000 in this budget to be covering that expense. And yeah, and the figure includes that we are buying a $220,000 truck, although we are borrowing against it. But the 418 includes the purchase of a $220,000 truck.
Yes, sir.
As far as that money is concerned, maybe I should address this to Maureen. Maureen, when we originally borrowed,
Actually, technically, you should address it to me, and we'll.
when we originally borrowed the money through the state, the Vermont bond, what's the proper name of that? Vermont bond bank, I guess it is.
Oh, the bond bank,
I
that was
thought
for...
as the FEMA monies, we were reimbursed by FEMA and the other state organizations, we would use that money to pay off that loan, and then there would be a balance left that was not paid by FEMA and the state and whatever other organizations were paying, and that we would be able to bond for that remaining amount for some period of time, out to, I believe, 20 years. And it's string with a low interest rate, if I remember correctly, it was like 1.9%. So I guess I'm questioning if we have that opportunity, what do we need to appropriate the other funds for, if you follow them?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a question. Maureen, do you want to answer that?
Well, I'm a little bit confused too, because from what my records show, we haven't used, the flood had nothing to do with capital.
The flood had nothing to do with what?
Our capital accounts.
Okay.
And this is capital that we're talking about.
All right.
So I don't know if we're going to be borrowing from capital for the floods. I'm not sure, but we have these figures ended 6/30/12, and there has been more flood expense since. And most of the money that we borrowed for the flood was out of line of credits, and the line of credits was about $2,750,000, and we paid back everything except for $400,000. That at first I was told the state was supposed to reimburse us for that, and now we're hearing contradictions that the state is not. So I just waiting to hear. They keep changing their minds, whether they're going to pay us or whether they're not going to pay us for it.
Okay. That was actually different than what I was trying to explain.
Oh.
I think it's, I can't remember, I think it was, his last name is Giuliano. It has something to do with the Vermont, the head of the Vermont bonding bank, I believe is what they call it. I'm not exactly sure if I have the correct name. But my understanding was that after everything was done, and I was on the board at the time, and I was the person who spoke to him, he said that our credit rating in Newfane was absolutely excellent. We would get the lowest credit rate, lowest interest rate, and that was at that time 1.9%. I don't know if that's changed. And when we were all done, and that balance was left, that was unpaid by the federal and the state, we could bond for that amount for a period of time. It was either out to 20 or 30 years, which would have very little impact on taxpayers. And I'm just questioning what happened to that.
All right. Maybe there's someone else who can
Well,
answer.
I think, Dennis, that you're referring to the money for the bridge, for Bridge 14. That's what the bond was for. And we still don't have the final. Yes, that's what the bond. That's what we raised the bond for. Yes, that's what the town voted on, is the bond.
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
It's his turn to speak.
I could be wrong, but I believe that what Mr. Wiswell refers to is the bond that we voted on, and as a town at a special meeting, to seek, and Giuliani was, in fact, is the lead person on that, to borrow for the building of the bridge. I believe it's 14. And we still don't have the final tabulation on it. If we can use some of that bonded money to pay our debts, obviously we would prefer to. We're not talking about how this money is going to be allocated at the end of the day. We're simply aware that this is a cost that's going to have to be absorbed.
Yes.
I understand what Dennis is talking about, because this is a different board than what we were talking about. We borrowed money for lines of credit through People's United Bank, and then whatever was left, we were to get a bond. It has nothing to do with the Bridge 14 bond or anything. And it just hasn't, we just haven't applied for that bond yet, because I think they're still waiting for the bottom line to see what we're going to actually get back and not. This was a different bond that was for Bridge 14, and we had received $138,000 that I had put into the capital account, but into the capital fund account, I actually took $50,000 for our fund bank account to up that from being in the negative that it is in this figure, and this just happened this fiscal year. So next year, our capital account, you'll see, it'll go up quite a bit, the balance, instead of being in the negative again.
Is there, yes?
I just suggest that we go back in the select board minutes, Dennis, and clarify, because our memories don't seem to be that great. I'm sorry.
And Christine?
I'd like to speak to this a little bit. I think I know what you're trying to say, Dennis, and we're not there yet. We aren't at the bottom line. That actually is one of the issues, and in a sense, the concern was to sort of pad the capital account slightly to make sure that we don't get caught, because there are some issues here. It will be, I'm guessing, another year before we get to where you're thinking of a bottom line, to where we'd have a bond that says that's the end product of what we lost for the town out of the whole of the FEMA financial. But we're in two bridges. We got two bridges to go right now, so we're going to be another year before we can get to that bottom line. That's the whole reason for this.
Yes.
Is it my understanding that this padding, which, you know, it ought to be called what it is, because if we're going to borrow money for the truck, the 220, then we ought to have a line in there for interest and a line on the truck, but then we should have a right up front, unknown expenditures that relates to Irene. Then there wouldn't be padding, it would be more of a reality as to what we're voting on this for 12 years.
Any other comments? Yes, in back.
Chris Campy, just from where I sit with work and working with a lot of the towns that were impacted by Irene, I would say advise it's a good strategy, because there is a lot of uncertainty about what FEMA will or will not reimburse for, and ultimately they're still going to, I don't know about Newfane specific situation, but there's still appeals yet to be heard or to be determined. Frankly, we're probably going to deal with this for a few more years yet. So I would suggest it's a good strategy on the board's part.
Lisa Harris, please stand up and. I think it does say that, unreimbursed flood expenses. It's got a line item. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Ready to vote? All right. We're on Article 13. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to authorize capital fund expenditures in the amount of $412,797 as proposed in the capital needs plan for fiscal year 2014? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and Article 13 passes. Article 14. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to borrow up to $220,000 for capital needs? Is there a motion? And is there a second? Did you get that, Myra? Second it? Greg? Greg and Myra. So, Article 14 is, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to borrow up to $220,000 for capital needs? Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'm assuming you're ready to vote. We're voting on Article 14. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to borrow up to $220,000 for capital needs? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Article 15 reads, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize town and highway operational expenditures in the amount of $1,222,279? Yeah. We have not done that. We'll have to do that by amendment if there is a motion or someone could make an amended motion. Doris. We don't have a motion yet. Okay, we have a motion now, and do we have a second? Pete Van Loan? All right. So, the Article 15, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize town and highway operational expenditures in the amount of $1,222,279? The floor is open for discussion, and this figure does not include the $5,100 voted on in Article 11. Doris.
I would like to amend the amount of the motion to read $1,227,379, which includes that, which adds to the $5,100.
Could you just read that to me slowly?
$1,227,379.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Anytime.
So, there is an amendment. Is there a second to the amendment? John has seconded it. Is there any discussion of the amendment? You ready to vote on the amendment? You're voting in favor of amending the number as printed to the number $1,227,379. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment passes. We are now discussing Article 15, if there is discussion, which now reads, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize town and highway operational expenditures in the amount of $1,227,379? Is there any discussion? You ready to vote? Oh, there's discussion.
Kim Friedman, South Newfane. On page 11, I'm wondering what the rationale is for reducing the administrative assistant salary from $40,188 to $35,545.
The reason is simply that the salary had reached that level because of the incumbent in the office the employee had many years of experience as administrative assistant, and that person left, and we hired a new person, and therefore it was at a new salary level based on that person's experience, etc.
Is there any other discussion or questions? Yes.
I'm a little bit concerned about the assistance to the town clerk and the assistance to the treasurer. It seems to me, I can't put a specific number, but it seems to me that each year we've had to employ more assistants to get the work done. And I was wondering if someone could address why that need has existed recently, whereas in the past, both the town clerk and the treasurer positions used to be able to take care of all their work, except when one of them was out of the office, and that was essentially the only time an assistant was needed. Why do we need one or two assistants to help the town clerk and the treasurer?
Is there someone who can speak to that? You want to speak to that?
I would just like to say, as far as an assistant to the treasurer, you need time to train the people for that when you're away. So you need a bigger budget so that you can train them. And then there should be somebody else that knows parts of your job, you know, in case something happened to you. There'd be nobody else that can just jump right in and do that. So for vacations, for sickness, for, you know, whatever you need to take time off for. There has to be training involved.
Is there further discussion?
Go ahead.
Gary, I'm really glad you brought this up. I have 3 assistants listed in there. They don't all work. I am legally required, as is Maureen, to appoint an assistant by state statutes. And so I have 3 assistants in there so that they can come in at various times. Now, 2 of the assistants that are listed in the town officers' pages have been paid totally by an organization called Vermont Associates. And Vermont Associates has people who are, quote unquote, displaced from their jobs being trained so that they could go out and get another job. I was very fortunate when I went into office that we had one of these Vermont Associates in office at that time, or in the office. And that person really helped out, as did Sandra Dowley, who's also listed as an assistant there, and her name is recorded with the county court system. So I could do all the work, but I'm trying to bring the town records into the 21st century. So the major work right now that's being done by the assistants is back indexing and scanning and getting our records digitalized. So in the last year, we've done about 2,600 pages going forward, and I double check all of that and make sure that it's in this COT systems that we now use, and it's backed up in 3 different places in Ohio. So if anything were to happen to the office records, those records at least could be recovered. So that's an important part of it. And at the end of, or beginning of December this last year, one of the 2 assistants did use up her 4 years in training. So she's agreed to continue at minimum wage, and the hours were cut. And as Maureen said, it's essential in the office at this point to be able to train people and to have people who can pick up the job. We're doing all of the fish and wildlife online. We do our marriage licenses online. We do this indexing online. The program is much more efficient, but on the other hand, it does take more time to be able to do that than to sit down and type up cards. So all of you are welcome to go online and go into town clerk's records and find Newfane and see any of the work, any of your documents. Online right now, you can't print them. So essentially, that's why I need, not that I can't do the work. Another factor that has come in year after year, Mike, when we did get the auditor's reports, they would always say you need to have somebody trained in your job so that you can take off, have vacation, and have somebody come in there. And it's often when the official is out of the office that some of these people have been discovered in terms of the embezzlement, for example, in Hardwick. So they come in, I double check, we have all sorts of checks and balances going on. I've also set up in the office, and everybody can use it, just to take your money in right now, you have to be able to use our cash register. So I can appreciate the fact that 5-10 years ago, people didn't need assistants who are working on a consistent basis, but all of your land records would stop if I'm hit by a bus or I'm not able to be there and I can't have these assistants in. Now you could say, why don't you let them go and just bring them in when I am absent from the office? Nobody's going to be able to work on that kind of a basis, and we all know that. This is minimal money to have an assistant town clerk. Another question, was that the only one? Yeah, I mean, did I answer? I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, did I answer his question?
Yeah, I believe you did. I believe you did. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who wants to speak to this issue? Do you want to speak again? It's your last time.
It's very frustrating to try to bring up issues of fiscal responsibility because they tend to be derided by the majority of the people in the room. It's just a penny here, it's just $1 there, it's not that much money. But we now have a situation where you walk into the town office on any given day, and there are 3 people there in the town clerk's office. Now, I know that times have changed in that technology requires more training than was necessary in the past. But my frustration is that we don't seem to be inclined to try to apply any brakes. We just let it sort of flow. Okay, we need another $1,500 this year, we'll give them another $1,500. We need another $1,500 next year, so on and so forth. When I go to pay my taxes, to get a receipt, I get shunted from the treasurer to the assistant treasurer to get the receipt. And all it is a question of pushing the button on the computer to print out the receipt. I guess it is clearly frustration, but I don't understand why we need as many people involved as we appear to have. And I wonder who's keeping an eye on that to make sure that we really do need all these additional resources, or whether it's something that just sort of happens. So it's the way it happens in organizations, where they tend to grow and grow over time if no one's keeping an eye on them.
Is there any other? Yes, Kim.
Kim, Colin, and Newfane. I think Gloria explained that pretty clearly, the need for that. And since she's in there fighting the good fight, I think if the rest of the select board is overseeing this, that we can trust that, in fact, she needs the assistant. And we don't want you to get hit by a bus, but if you did, to our record. I forgot to pack my jammies, so can we call the question?
I need a second, and I do see another hand up. Is there a second for calling the question? Yes. Okay, so we're going to, all those in favor of calling the question, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. Sounds like a 2/3 majority to me. The question has been called, and we will now vote on Article 15 as amended. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the town and highway operational expenditures in the amount of $1,227,379? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and Article 15 passes. You have passed your town budget. Congratulations. Because we had such a busy morning with the governor, Dick Merrick had to leave and go on to Marlborough before he could answer the Doyle poll. But he left us copies, all right? And he also left us copies of his annual town meeting legislative update. We're delighted that he's out of bed this year for town meeting, although we understand he's not feeling tip-top, which is why they have a break right now, so that Dick can come home and be cared for. I'll put these on the front table, and then we are ready to go on to our final article. Article 16, to transact any other business that may legally come before the town.
Great record. I'd just like to point out page 51, Newbrook Fire Department. I'm the president of that. I have been for over 15 years. I don't know what happened. That's not my submission. What that was a letter probably most all of you got. We do send out our annual letter, but I usually send in something that's a little bit more specific. The whole point of what I'm saying is I just want to make it clear to everybody we're asking for level funding, which is $17,500.
Is there any other discussion? Chris? No? We're open.
In the very near future, this town is going to have to spend an awful lot of money on this bridge right down the road. It's literally falling in the river every single day. It's real bad. In the next few years, the town's going to have to spend an awful lot of money.
Thank you. I'd like to ask everybody to please not speed by my house if you're taking a detour. Go ahead.
Well, I have another point, but is the bridge that you're talking about, isn't that called the Arch Bridge?
Yes.
So isn't that, I thought I noted that in our, for the, no, it's not in there?
John, can you answer your
We've
question?
been putting a small amount of money towards that bridge. Our problem, in a nutshell, is that the cost of that bridge without state aid is more, it's approximately, as a rough guess, twice our annual budget of the entire town. So we need state aid, and we're not, despite its condition, high enough on the list to get it. We will continue to put money toward it, so where our share is ready, and we'll continue to press the state to get that bridge elevated, keep it above water. Keep it on the states, moving up the agenda on the states. Irene. Yeah, Irene went from, if you take Bridge 14, I'm sorry, but if you take Bridge 14 that we did finish, if that bridge, if that construction had not started before Irene, that bridge went from something like number 1 to number 200 on the state's list after Irene. So that's what we're up against, but it's an absolutely valid point.
Okay, so then, Chris, and then I don't think I stated her name, Gerald, who is Speedway, South Newfane. And so I wanted to come back to a point that Chairman John Mack brought up with Peter Shumlin, and that Peter did not address. John brought up the 2 points about FEMA, but he also brought up about our local control here of what's going on and what happens with the Public Service Board. And for those of you who have been reading and aware, with the cell tower issues, there's the one about the one being located in downtown Newfane, but the other over here on Parish Hill Road. And I first of all want to acknowledge the hard work that the whole select board and in their, as a group, have written letters to the Public Service Board expressing, I believe, the views of the people who have attended those meetings. And then John personally, on his own, wrote another very good letter saying how basically we feel that our local officials who are serving on the zoning board, they write these ordinances, they put a lot of research and thought into preserving and protecting our towns, and yet it feels like a total snub to the towns when a corporation can come in and persuade the Public Service Board that this is indeed in the public good. And it might be overall, yes, I think there's very few who would argue with the governor that we do need to be brought up to speed here with literally internet and cell phone access. However, it's just totally disregarding the local public good.
And I think, I don't know what more than to bring this up, where can we go with this? Any corporation that sees it might be best to have a Walmart on Route 30 between here and Townsend and can persuade the Public Service Board, perhaps that's a good idea, that might work out. Or any other, whether it's a giant corporation, whatever. It just feels like we have these ordinances, and this particular tower is completely disregarding the ordinances. And I can say for a fact, last night I wanted to make a phone call on my cell phone. Route 30 is where we need cell service. I could not use my cell phone until I turned onto Grimes Hill Road, and all the way through here. Anybody has a cell phone now? Mine works in this building. It will work all the way up through Dover, which is the corridor that they say is most important. I think there are many other areas of this town that also need that service. And they've really disregarded the efforts of the local citizens to look at alternate sites, to think rationally here. So I think I appreciate the efforts on the select board and Chairman Mack's efforts, but this is setting a bigger precedent of, where do we have control, and obviously we don't. So thank you. Keith.
The matter you just brought up, the person that can speak to the room that I think can speak best to the nitty-gritty on this would be Chris. I don't want to bounce it off on him. This is statute. The legislature, that's where we should go on this particular point. The governor says yes, no, after the legislature played their games.
Do you want me to speak?
Actually, I want to recognize Mr. Roberts.
David Roberts. Well, I know I doubt it would have any impact at all, but I think we could pass a resolution to write a letter to the legislature making this point that we're being overlooked and bypassed in a local decision-making process, and that the law is not effective in representing us as a local community. Like, can we pass this? Really, question to you, the moderator. Can we pass a resolution of that type?
Absolutely. We can pass a resolution. We can ask the select board. They're not legally bound, but they probably would follow. Do you want to make a resolution?
Well, I'm not sure if we phrase it, but it would be to...
Use regular language. We all understand it better.
Legislators who make these laws, that the law is not serving us because the Public Service Board does not acknowledge letters from our select board or does not respond to them, and we have in practice, no local input that means anything. We can make words, but we have no impact on decisions, including this cell tower and similar ones. Broad, long area, but Public Service Board is not representing the people of the town of Newfane in its actions.
That's a long resolution. And I think that we could have someone second it and offer it to the select board that they get the gist of it. Would that be, is someone willing to second it? Lori Miner is seconded. Is there further discussion? You want to just vote? You want further discussion on this particular issue? Yes.
Unless I'm mistaken, John, I think your letter to the editor pretty much sums it up, and I think all you have to pretty much do is take John's letter from the Board of Selectmen representing the town.
Right, I couldn't do that. That would work.
Okay. Is that satisfactory?
That would be a motion.
That's a motion. Right. The motion on the floor was a gist, and I think.
I would withdraw my motion.
Thank you. The motion has been withdrawn and has been replaced, I believe, with a motion to send the letter that John Mack has already had published in the paper to the Public Service Board. Is that correct? And to the legislators. It's seconded by Mr. Pelsu. Is there any further discussion?
So he'd be sending it as chairman of the select board?
Yes. Or from the entire town, on behalf of, if it passes, on behalf of us. Is there further discussion? Let's vote. All those in favor of instructing the Select Board to send this letter to the legislators and the Public Service Board on our behalf, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. It appears to pass unanimously. It's non-binding and clear. Is there further instruction, Chris? Yeah, we're on another subject now. Non-binding subject.
Chris Campus, so just to follow up on what you just brought up, this is actually going to require a change in statute. And in the case of a Walmart or any other development, that would fall under Act 250. And in that case, actually, town plans and ordinances would control. So that's why your local planning process is so important. Communications powers is different. And then another thing I would just encourage the town to follow is the work of the governor's appointed Energy Generation Siting Commission, which is looking at the Public Service Board process associated with the siting of all kinds of different energy generation. What's been getting most press has been about wind, but also this is everything. So it's also biomass, solar. So no matter what position you take on any kind of energy generation, what they're ultimately getting at is how easy or difficult it is for municipalities, regional commissions, abutters, other stakeholders to participate in that Public Service Board process, and also what effect town plans and regional plans have in that process. So they've got a website up. You can just Google Vermont energy generation, and it'll pop right up. It's an important, and they've been really good about documenting their entire process, and they've begun their deliberative session. If I can just make one other point, we voted here today to provide support to the Southeast Vermont Economic Development Strategy process. One of the things that I can tell you, having participated in that process, is some of what the data shows is that our region, relative to a lot of the United States and a lot of Vermont, we have a lot of people, a disproportionate number of people in the region who are non-salary and wage dependent. We have a lot of people who live on other sources of income, pensions, retirement income, investments, those kinds of things. It's been really difficult to get the public to engage on economic development planning. So now that I'm glad to see the town's willing to put money into it. You need to really put yourselves into it. The SEB as part of developing this comprehensive economic development strategy, begun to have public meetings about what the economic vision is for the future of the region. They're having them 4 different meetings. You can go to their website. I don't remember right off the top of my head, but I know one is happening towards the end of the month in Londonderry. So please participate as individuals in that process too, because the plan is only going to be as good as as the public engagement is and the buy-in is. And so I hope people participate in that process.
Thank you. Yes, Jake.
J.P. Rattle, South Newfane. This is a completely different subject. I have a question about the town hall hours, the office hours. I've heard a lot of feedback from other people about it being inconvenient, especially if we have a week where there's a Monday holiday, the town office being closed on Friday. I would like to get other opinions on what if the day they were closed every week was Monday. And if there was a holiday that Monday, then maybe they could adjust their hours during the week so that it would be much more convenient people coming up and wanting to get a license for the weekend, or anybody coming into town Fridays. It's just inconvenient from what I've heard for a lot of people that it's closed on Fridays, and days that we have a holiday, it's closed 2 days a week. I'm just wondering what other people think about that.
All right. Do other people have opinions on this?
cart day Saturday, so that people that have to work can get there on Saturday and get honey fishing license or the landfill sticker or whatever they need. So I am totally in support of that.
Is there any other discussion? Yes.
Just suggest a show of hands. Do you support that?
Oh, all right. Thank you. Before we do that, is there any other conversation about this? Yes.
Director, I think it should be clarified. That isn't up to us. Town clerk has all the authority to put her own hours in. Trust me, I think we're not user friendly in this town either. So I'm not arguing with you. I just want you to understand that's her fault, not ours. We can make suggestions.
Excuse me, I think that's out of order. It's a personal attack. And I'm, okay.
No, I didn't mean that. I wasn't trying to attack you.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That was not my intent whatsoever.
All right. And it sounds like I'm wrong, so. I think, is there any other conversation? Any other opinions? Joyce?
Joyce Newfane, my question is, then if we say that we're interested in changing it, then what is the process that we would go through to change those hours? Who makes that decision?
This is non-binding. This is just the same as asking the select board to send a letter. It's information for the people who can make these changes. We have no binding. We can't make any binding decisions because nothing's been warned.
I know that, but I'm just asking then how does that happen? If we give information, how does it change? Can they just change it?
There's already a question. Is there anyone who can answer that question? Dan can answer that question?
As Greg pointed out, that's the bailiwick of the town clerk. It's part of their responsibilities, and it's entirely up to them. So we elect the town clerk, and then they make their responsibilities. So if we ask the town, we can ask the town clerk to do something. Yeah. If they don't, we don't like it, we can vote them out. But it's entirely the town clerk's bailiwick.
Thank you for that answer. Lori?
I'm just wanting to support what Greg was saying, is that it wasn't a personal attack. That's how the state has it written up, that elected officials, the town clerk, can set her own hours.
Most people come in and do their title searches on a Monday. And also people being able to come in and vote. Early voting is always available. It's been available for at least 20, 30 days now for this meeting. And that allows people who get out at 5 to be able to come and actually do the voting and do business at that time.
All right. So let's have a show of hands. We'll do it a few ways. I'm going to ask you show of hands for who would like town. We're talking about the town clerk. Yes? Town clerk hours on Friday, and then on Saturday, and then is that enough? We'll start with that. I'm trying to get. Who would like to see the town clerk's office open on Fridays? And who would like to see the town clerk's office open on Saturdays? And who would like to see the town clerk's office open till 6 o'clock some days of the week? Well, it's open 4 days a week now. It seems as if I can't. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Gloria,
Yeah.
Deb, could Gloria maybe have an assistant there on Friday or Saturday? What's that?
We're asking Gloria if the town clerk could have an assistant there on Friday or Saturday. Without her. Was that a yes?
The answer is yes to that. Somebody would willingly come in, but we have to also understand that I don't have enough money in terms of a full keeping somebody there for that amount of time. So if we're talking, do you want somebody there from 9 to noon? Do you want somebody there from 9 to 3? You know, we can talk about these things, and that's fine. And then I felt some reaction to having an assistant town clerk there without the town clerk being in the office. They have taken an oath of office. Both of my town clerks that are the Vermont Associate women are fully trained in everything that I do there. And as a matter of fact, I will be taking a vacation and they'll be responsible. Sandy Dowley at this point doesn't feel that she can do much other than come in and sit and knit, which is fine. She can answer the phones and answer some questions, but she would be unable to give you fish and wildlife licenses, and she'd be unable to do marriage licenses and unable to do any of the recording.
Thank you. I have a question of, well, you have a question. Go ahead.
My thought would be from here on out, we would take the information that's come here, hands, oral, and so forth, and just make them advisory to those people who are involved in being in the town office at some time.
Can you word that so we can do a show of hands, or do you think we've already done it?
No, I think we're all
You think we've done it already? Lynn Bedell begs to differ.
You didn't ask if we should just leave it the same as it is right now.
Should we leave it the same as it is right now? Show of hands. You can please some of the people all of the time, and all of the people none of the time. Is there any other non-binding business to legally come before the meeting? Yes.
I just wanted to express appreciation and offer thanks to Priscilla Cotton for serving on the board this year. I know she chose not to run again, but to do it.
Thank you. I have a couple of more announcements, and one, yeah.
I'd also like to thank the town highway crew. I think we're really lucky to live together.
While we're thanking people, I would like to thank the select board who put in untold hours on our behalf. I want to make you aware of a movement that you may not have heard of called Not Slow Food and Not Slow Medicine, but Slow Democracy. And we've just experienced it. Other parts of the world are catching on. We are, it's a tradition here in this state, but it is catching on in other parts of this country and in other parts of the world, especially in the developing world. But as has been noted today, we have a sense of erosion of local control, and we also have opportunities to reverse that. And to that end, and quite just without really having thought this through, I would like to invite people who are interested in discussing how we might do this and make our town meeting even more vibrant than it is now, and how we might wrest control back to our local boards, and how we might get more people involved in local government, and how we might even start the Newfane News. And I'm willing to be the point person. If you are interested in any of these subjects, please get in touch with me, either my home number, which is in the phone book under my name, or at my website, which is deborahleeluskin.com. And you can contact me, and we can get a group of people who are interested in promoting and strengthening our slow democracy. That's it, yeah.
We successfully found fire.
Before we stop,
Yes.
I'd like the town to know that last summer I had a rattlesnake in my garden. It was the first confirmed sighting from Windham County. I live off the South Waterbury Road, where the road turns to dirt, and the theory is I found it in July. I was just about to pick it up. It was so well hidden in some leaves I was going to use as mulch. And I spoke to the herpetologist at Middlebury College and Doug Blodgett of Fish and Wildlife. And they think that there must be a den somewhere between the South Waterbury Road and the Townsend line. And because it was such an early spring last year, they've got to go that far. July is about the furthest extent of their range. They go out and out and out, and then they turn around and come back and back and back. So I'd just like people to be aware of that. It was incredibly well camouflaged. It wasn't a milk snake. So people should know in the future, especially if we have an early spring, that a rattlesnake is possible in their garden or in their home.
And could you please remind everybody of your name and where you live?
Joan Marr, and I live on the Clark Farm Road.
Thank you. Yes, Joyce.
I'd like to just thank you all for your generosity. We had a record year today back here, so
You can put your Doyle polls right back up here on the table. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor of adjournment, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. I think the ayes have it.
You